Chapter 630. The Dragon Slumber Shrine was located in the center of the Dragon Bone Wilderness. This land covered in ice and snow was also the place where the souls of the dying dragons, who were seriously injured or seriously ill, or had exhausted their lifespans, returned to the earth. Huge dragon skeletons could be seen everywhere on the snowy ground. If these incomparably hard dragon skeletons were to flow into the human world, it would undoubtedly be a huge fortune that would attract the covetous eyes of countless powerhouses. However, here it was only an ornament that inevitably existed in the dragon graveyard. Close. Even though he had been to the Dragon Slumber Shrine more than once in the game, when he witnessed this unprecedented miracle with his own eyes, Duque still felt shocked. On the left and right sides of his field of vision were flying snowflakes and an endless wilderness of bones. In the middle, there was a huge ravine that divided the entire Dragon Bone Wilderness into two. Standing at the end of the ravine was the Dragon Slumber Shrine. When the glittering golden shrine with countless golden domes attached to the main tower appeared in Duque's field of vision, Duque's heart felt as if it had been hammered by a sledgehammer. The Dragon Slumber Shrine in the game was always an illusory data model. If there was a word to describe the Dragon Slumber Shrine that Duque saw with his true eye, he could only think of one word: miracle. On the flying carpet, Duque and his party slowly approached the main entrance of the Dragon Slumber Shrine. On both sides of the main entrance stood a row of Dragonians. Dragonians had different colored skin, and apart from standing in human form, there was not a single part of their body that resembled a human. They had a terrifying physique that would make mortals feel oppressed just by standing in front of them. They were nearly 3 stories tall and 8 meters tall. They held a huge metal spear in one hand and a huge hammer that could be used as an iron felt by humans. They wore heavy armor that even the strongest warhorse could not carry, and stood majestically on both sides of the main entrance. Not only them, but there were also hundreds of young dragons that were guardians of the shrine hovering in the air on both sides of the main entrance. Every 100 young dragons formed a row, and there were 6 rows on both sides of the air in an inverted trapezoid shape. Be that as it may, even the burly draconid or the young dragon guardian whose body was as massive as a temple were as insignificant as ants in front of the huge arched door that easily surpassed the edge of Duque's vision. According to the system elf's judgment, the width of the arched door was 512 meters, and the height was an unimaginable 1024 meters. This was the true giant door that the 5 dragon aspects had not felt crowded when they entered at the same time. Even by the standards of the Dragon Clan, this was undoubtedly a super door. If Duque were to walk, it would take him at least an hour to climb up the steps of the main entrance and step into the huge main entrance. Duque's lungs were filled with cold air not because of the weather but because of the shock. He didn't even have the time to look at the relief sculptures on the roof and the huge pillars. Just looking at the roof of the Dragon Slumber Shrine that seemed to cover the entire sky, even a transmigrator like him who had seen the world couldn't help but want to worship this miraculous building. This was not something that science could do. From this, it could be deduced how amazing the power of the Titans of creation was. Anglodis is mighty. A string of draconic words echoed in the shrine. With the help of the translator, Duque was shocked to find that it was a giant dragon reciting Duque's deeds. From discovering the conspiracy of the Black Dragon King, to sneaking into the Emerald Dream to summon Isra, to summoning the 3 dragon aspects, to killing his way into grim battle to save Alexstrasza, and finally to discovering Nesario again and looking for an opportunity to set up an ambush. Finally, he helped the Dragon Clan eliminate this great traitor who had been at large for 10,000 years. When this dragon language was recited, it was filled with a sense of mystery and a wonderful rhythm. It sounded like an elegant poem with cadence, not a pale and straightforward narration. Duque could clearly feel that the gazes of the Draconids and Dragon Guardians had begun to change. There was doubt. There was disbelief. There was curiosity. But more than that, there was admiration. The Dragon Clan advocated force, but they also admired wisdom. If the 4 Dragon Kings could break the shackles of the demon's soul with their own strength, why couldn't they do it for the past 10,000 years? If the 4 Dragon Kings could easily kill the great traitor Nesario, why did they let him escape the last time? Through this introduction, the dragons began to understand that if there was any difference between the past and the present, it was because of the addition of Duke Marcus. These Draconids and Dragon Guardians could not help but be in awe of Duque. After entering the huge shrine, They saw that the four-colored dragons had surrounded the square in the middle of the shrine in all directions. There was no lack of ancient dragons that were more than 50 meters long. However, no matter how big they were, how sharp their teeth were, or how hot their dragon breath was, in this sacred ceremony to exterminate the traitor, only Duque, who was in the middle of the square, was the focus of all the dragon clan's vertical pupils. "You'd better pass the small test later," Krasis suddenly said without rhyme or reason. "Pass? Pass what?" Roar. First, a large number of red dragons opened their sharp, scarlet mouths wide at Duque, and let out waves of terrifying dragon roars that sounded like a tsunami. As long as a dragon roared, there would be dragon might. The fierce pressure of a creature at the top of the food chain immediately made it difficult for Duque to breathe. It was as if two boulders were pressing down on Duque's chest. Every time he inhaled, the boulders would take the opportunity to press inward, and every time he exhaled he would have to face the counterattack of 100 kilograms of pressure. Roar. The bronze dragon roared. This time, Duque only felt that the pressure on his chest had increased by 100 kilograms. It was the kind of oppressive feeling that he could not bear even a little more pressure. However, the bronze dragon's roar had the feeling of pulling the weight of his past and future to the present all at once. That kind of pressure that seemed to be measured in tons almost made Duque spit out a mouthful of blood. Damn it! What are these big lizards trying to do? Almost subconsciously, Duque began to circulate his magic circuit, injecting magic into every muscle in his body, using magic to resist this increasingly strong pressure. Roar, roar, roar. Suddenly the blue dragons also roared. That strange roar seemed to be destroying the magic circuit in Duque's body with maximum power. If it were a weaker mage, their magic circuit would have been shattered instantly, and their magic would have gone berserk, causing their body to collapse and die. Fortunately, Duque had the help of the system elf. Under the dual active and passive control, Duque barely managed to fight the pressure from the dragon might to a standstill. Roar. The green dragon that had been silent also roared. Unlike the dragon might of other races, the green dragon's roar was not as domineering. It did not have the kind of momentum that could topple everything, but it had the exquisite and pervasive feeling of quicksilver spilling on the ground. The green dragon's roar was obviously eroding Duque's will. Chapter 631. Duque felt like he was in a trance. If his willpower had been divided into two levels before, his would still be his, and the system elf would still be the system elf. But now what he felt was that the firebird's might of the four-colored dragons was like a hammer, pounding on the core of the subway. Hammering with willpower while constantly hammering at Duque's will, it also led to the sublimation of Duque's spiritual domain. And sublimation only needed an opportunity. Duque was not a native of Azeroth. He had not experienced a childhood where he had to deal with wolves and murlocs even in the supposedly most peaceful elven forest. He was just a college animal who grew up in a big city. This lack of experience made him destined to have a slightly weaker psychological endurance in the face of danger and pressure in battle. For example, he was always easily hit by the warlock's fear. Duque also had his advantages. He was a transmigrator who remembered the general situation. The experience of looking at the overall situation as an outsider gave him a sense of superiority that the natives could never understand. This mentality of standing at the top of the ecological chain and looking down like a god was his trump card. Duque suddenly became angry. Me. This. Bit. Small. Dragon. Forget. Me. Root. Onion. I am Duque. I am Duque who rose from nothing to become a hero of the Alliance and sat in the position of commander. I am Duque who killed hundreds of thousands of orcs, killed so many chiefs, made use of Ghoul, Dan to become rich and killed Nethario the Wing of Death. I am Duque who is determined to use Ragnaros, the King of Flames, as a lighter, and break and purify the Lich King's Frostmourne to use as an air conditioner in the future. The one and only Duque in the world. You little dragons who are only worthy of EXP actually dare to shout at me? Laugh. Words. Dragons might, right? Then don't blame me for being rude. System Elfie. Humph. It was a seemingly ordinary snort, but in the ears of the dragon race, it had a different meaning. The magic circuits in Duque's body were already a little chaotic, and the elements in the air seemed to have sensed Duque's aura and suddenly trembled. In the blink of an eye, the elements in the air appeared in 4 different colors and turned into 4 magic blades that could be seen by the naked eye. They slashed in all directions like lightning. At the same time, the magical elements that contained some kind of mysterious power suddenly flashed. Like waves stacking on top of each other, they rose to an even higher peak, bursting with endless power. Ancient dragon might. When the 4 types of magic radiance that corresponded to the 4-color dragon race slashed down, the young dragons were immediately scared out of their wits. Never in their wildest dreams would they have imagined that a mere human like Duque would actually be able to release an awe-inspiring might that rivaled that of an ancient colossal dragon. When the magic blade slashed down, they only felt one thing: death. Oh! The 3 dragon kings on the highest floor of the dragon slumber godly palace looked surprised at the same time. If it were the dragon ambassadors beside Duque, they would be horrified. Chi! The magic blade that Duque counterattacked was too fast. It was so fast that it almost flashed by, and the strange and mysterious power contained within it even disappeared in an instant. However, in the eyes of these young dragons and dragonians, they saw a completely different scene. When the light that corresponded to their race's skin color slashed down, blood immediately gushed out of their necks. Be it dragon scales, dragon skin, or even the hardest dragon bones that could block most sharp weapons in the world, they were all slashed in half. Their heads shot up into the sky and their bodies slumped to the ground. The blood of the dragon stained the sacred dragon's slumber. I'm dead. Countless dragons' necks suddenly shrunk and countless dragonians retreated in shock, touching their still intact necks. Was that an illusion? Although the blade radiance that was made of this aura only flashed for a moment, it was enough to scare every dragon out of their wits. In an instant, the entire dragon slumber godly palace trembled, and it was the reflection of the dragons retreating. How could there be such a terrifying person who made tens of thousands of dragonians and thousands of young dragons feel the illusion of being killed with just his aura? Just recalling that feeling made them feel cold and weak all over. Every dragon and dragonian asked themselves, is this Duke Marcus telling us that he can kill us if he wants to? At this moment, seeing the exaggerated scene of tens of thousands of dragons bowing down, Krasis and the 3 dragon ambassadors beside Duque showed expressions of awe. How breathtaking! Congratulations! Congratulations! For humans it's perfect. Duque was a little confused. I pass, right? Then what is this? This is something we've all experienced. Of course it's not as perfect as yours. You'll know after the ceremony. Krasis continued to whet Duque's appetite. Okay, you can now go to the highest floor to watch the ceremony. Duque was speechless. Of course he knew that the dragon slumber godly palace was also divided into upper, middle and lower floors, but he didn't know that these big lizards were so cunning. They asked him to watch the ceremony, but didn't say which floor he would go to. It was still that fiery red flying carpet, and Duque and the others were lifted out of the godly palace again, spiraling toward the highest floor of the godly palace. Finally, at the highest floor, Duque saw the 3 dragon kings in human form. Alexstrasza was the first to greet him. Good job. Malygos was a little dissatisfied. This human kid secretly learned the dragon soul method. Nozdormu was disdainful. So what? Duque smiled bitterly. Right. So what? With the help of the platinum disc in his hand, which was a fragment of the dragon soul, he used the system to analyze part of the composition principle, and even the formula similar to Firebird. However, the power of the magic simulation of the dragon's roar was limited. After all, he was not a real dragon aspect and did not have a real dragon soul. Naturally, it was impossible for him to have the kind of terrifying power that could make thousands of dragons bow to him. At best, the power he exuded was similar to that of a 10,000-year-old dragon. It was okay to scare the small fry, but it was completely ineffective against a dragon of Krasis level. The red dragon queen puffed out her chest proudly. In any case, Duque, the human hero who saved me from the dark prison, has proven his courage. He is qualified to stand here and watch the end of Nesario. Wasn't Nesario dead? Just as Duque was a little puzzled, the remains of Nesario suddenly appeared in the void in the middle of the highest floor of the godly palace, which was like a garden pavilion, completely open and supported by several huge stone pillars. Chapter 632. The golden light of dawn shone into the highest level of the temple, illuminating the surroundings with a golden hue. However, the golden light could not penetrate the dark and special remains in the middle of the temple. The remaining dark aura was like a remnant bonfire half extinguished, still struggling in an attempt to pollute the light in this sacred place with the weak power of darkness. The remains that had lost their life for a full week were not floating quietly in mid-air. They seemed to be struggling. There was still a faint, constantly churning layer of black aura around the remains. At this time, on every pillar on the highest level of the temple, an illusory golden eye suddenly opened out of thin air. Dooku could clearly feel the countless gazes from the few golden eyes that were focused on him. This was the dragon race's mage eye. Not every dragon or dragon man was qualified to watch the ceremony at the highest level of the temple. In this way they quietly watched the end of Neltharion. Under the watchful eyes of all the dragon descendants, a sphere shining with a strange light appeared outside Nesario's remains that were suspended in mid-air at the highest level. Like a horizontal line on the horizon, it divided the entire sphere into two. The upper half was gold that refracted the light of dawn, and the lower half was black like the distant starry sky. Whether it was the warm and genial golden light above or the deathly still black below, they both gave people the feeling that these two kinds of light represented the world. Dooku suddenly realized that the line was the boundary between life and death. A few cracks soon appeared on the sphere, and from time to time, small fragments peeled off the sphere with a slight tremor and dissipated into the air. The vibration of Nesario's remains suddenly became more intense, and a dragon's roar filled with endless hatred and resentment suddenly shook the entire temple. The voice of Nesario's soul actually sounded in the entire temple. Roar, no one can judge me, I am the supreme king of the dragon race. I am the purifier of the world. I am the only ruler of the new world. The dragon's remains floating in mid-air changed with the burst of sound waves. The separated dragon head and the ragged broken neck kept colliding as if trying to recombine. The huge black dragon head seemed to want to return to its original position, but no matter how hard it tried, it could not do so. Either the broken spine stabbed into the dragon's chin, or the dragon head rested on the shoulder next to its neck. Nesario seemed to be in great pain. He screamed and his body rolled. His dragon wings opened their hooked claws, as if he wanted to grab his head and make his body whole again. He was so furious that he kept cursing. He cursed the names of every dragon king, cursed Dooku who plotted against him, cursed the dragon slumber shrine, and even cursed all living beings in the world. For a moment, Dooku almost suspected that Nesario was really coming back to life. When he glanced at the calm expressions of the three dragon kings, Dooku also entered into spectator mode. Sure enough, Alexstrasza could no longer bear to watch the ugliness of Nesario's remnant soul. Bathed in the morning light, she seemed to have transformed into the sun. It was clearly a cold snort, but it made people feel that there was a gorgeous and blazing feeling in the voice. Enough. You're an evil degenerate who betrayed the entire dragon race and went against our eternal mission. It seems that if we leave you alone, even if you become a filthy ghost dragon or a corpse dragon, you will continue to harm this world. In the face of Alexstrasza's roar, Nesario's remnant soul still ignored her. So what if I am? I'm not convinced. Even if I fall into the deepest depths of hell, I will still take revenge on you hypocrites in my own way. Yes, that's right. I'm supposed to be the victor here. As long as I get your egg, I can create more new species of dragons. I can use my evil art to purify this world that has been occupied by the inferior races. The Red Dragon Queen was momentarily speechless. Nesario was indeed dead, but his soul had not completely dissipated. One of the important reasons why this dragon ceremony was held was to vent her anger and correct the views of the dragons and their descendants. Now that Nesario was so stubborn, even though he was dead and only half of his soul was left, she could certainly destroy this traitorous Black Dragon King just like that. But in that case, the effect of preaching would be greatly reduced. Maligos suddenly said, "Hold the ceremony. I've scolded him for 7 days and 7 nights, but he has no regrets." Nozdormu said, "I have no objections." But Alexstrasza wasn't willing. The traitor that she had fought against for 10,000 years was finally brought to justice, but this guy still looked like a spiritual warrior even in death. How could she vent her anger like this? How could the millions of dragon descendants vent their anger? Was this the result of fighting against the Black Dragon army for 10,000 years? No, absolutely not. At this time, the Red Dragon Queen suddenly thought of Dooku. Yes, that kid has the most ideas. Duque was speechless when the Red Dragon Queen suddenly sent him a telepathic message. Yo Duque, if you can help make that mad dragon confess or make a fool of himself, I'll owe you another big favor. It's a deal. Seeing that Duque agreed so readily, Alexstrasza really regretted it a little. Did she promise too easily? However, there were so many dragon descendants watching. If she destroyed Nesario's soul just like that, there might be more betrayals in the future. The queen gritted her teeth and accepted it. Duque said slowly, "Oh Nesario, I can't help but pity you." Nesario's remnant soul laughed out loud. "Pity me? Huh. I'm the Supreme One. Why should I let you pity me?" Duque shook his head and said, "Because you don't have anything." Even the idea of purifying the world and becoming the only master of Azeroth was brainwashed by the ancient god Enzoth. You're just a pitiful wretch who doesn't even have self-will. Nesario cursed, **T. You still don't want to admit it? That's the effect of the whispers of the ancient gods. Nesario insisted, "There's absolutely no such thing." Well, as long as you're willing to do a small experiment in front of everyone, as long as you successfully pass this experiment, I'll let you go, Duque said. The other two dragon kings were indignant. If they really let Nesario run out and turn into a zombie dragon, he would definitely be a super disaster. For a moment they wanted to object. However, the approval of the two female dragon kings suddenly came from the sky. "Leave it to Duque." "Okay." Nesario agreed. "The experiment is very simple. As long as you repeat the sentence, 'I don't have a brain,' 1,000 times, then I'll ask you a question. If you can answer it correctly, you'll pass. So, I don't have a brain. I don't have a brain. I don't have a brain." The entire temple echoed with Nesario's brainwashing voice. The moment he repeated it 1,000 times, Duque suddenly shouted, "Nesario, do you have a brain?" Nesario replied without hesitation, "I don't have a brain." Thousands of giant dragons spat out dragon breath. Chapter 633. If it was human saliva, it would at most cause some pollution. The dragon breath of the dragon race itself had considerable lethality. Even if it was incomplete, so many breaths still caused a lot of damage. Of course, most of the dragons had thick skin and flesh. Compared to that small injury, the comical performance of the Wing of Death, Nesario, shocked the dragons even more. It was foreseeable that he would be the laughing stock of the dragon race for the next 1,000 years. Alexstrasza rolled her eyes. She had originally hoped for a just trial that would make all the dragons take warning. Who knew that Nesario's remnant soul would be so stubborn and not feel the slightest bit guilty? This made the four-colored dragons, who were bent on revenge and wanted to give this rebellious dragon king the harshest punishment, feel as if they had punched thin air. Alright, leave it to Duque. Duque finally solved the problem. However, it was not in the form that the dragon aspects wanted. Nesario's remnant soul came to its senses. "Duque, you tricked me? Oh, of course I have a brain. I decided to dominate this world with my own will. Yes. Anyone who shouts 'I am the ruler of the world' 1,000 times will feel like a god for a moment," Duque replied as if he was in a bad mood. This immediately aroused the laughter of countless dragons below. Many of the temple guardian dragons that were originally hovering in mid-air laughed until their stomachs hurt, and almost fell from mid-air. Thousands of dragons revealed their sharp fangs and giggled. The scene was truly terrifying. Fortunately, Duque did not see it. Alexstrasza also had a hard time holding it in. She kept telling herself, "I must not laugh at a time like this. I am the great Nesario, my wisdom is the highest. Didn't you see that I fooled you fools for 10,000 years? The soul wrapped around the black dragon corpse roared. These words made all four of the giant dragons of four colors uncomfortable. Unexpectedly, Duque immediately added a fatal blow. Yes, you are the wisest, Nesario. After the brain eater opened your skull, it did not care about you at all. Instead, the dung beetle's eyes lit up when it saw what was in your skull. Alexstrasza, Nozdormu, Maligos, Isra, who was far away in the Emerald Dream but was paying attention to what was happening, was speechless. After 3 seconds of dead silence, the dragon with the lowest sense of humor was the first to collapse, bursting into laughter. Then came the second one, the third one. The dragon race's grand ceremony turned into a comedy show. The Red Dragon Queen had a love-hate relationship with Duque. She liked Duque for saving the day, but she also hated him for ruining the atmosphere. She glared fiercely at Duque, then sighed. Nesario, you pathetic fellow. You've been carrying on a false will and wreaking havoc in the world of Azeroth for 10,000 years. This was the misfortune and sorrow of the dragon clan. However, all the suffering, all the betrayals will come to an end today. The three human-shaped dragons occupied the east, south, and west directions, while Isra's human-shaped virtual image suddenly appeared in the north. The four dragon kings stretched out their right hands at the same time and pressed in the void. Four giant virtual dragon claws of different colors appeared on the highest floor of the Dragon Sleep Temple. The four dragon claws mercilessly slashed down, and there was immediately an incredible force in the Dragon Sleep Temple that resonated with it. This force was so vast and shocking that when it approached Nesario's remains and remnant soul, ripples appeared in the surrounding space. The seemingly insignificant force made Wings of Death let out a painful howl. The four dragon kings were unmoved. No, it should be said that there was a faint sense of pleasure in their hearts. As the virtual dragon claws fell, the ball of light that wrapped around Nesario suddenly turned into countless lifelike little dragons the size of a human arm. However, these tiny wyverns were like real dragons as they opened their mouths to bite Nesario, slapping him with their claws and whipping him with their tails. Duque finally saw that every blow from these little dragons weakened Nesario's existence in this world. Duque's heart shuddered. The dragons were going to completely wipe out Nesario's existence. Even if the Lich King was right next to him, it would be impossible for him to be resurrected into a bone dragon due to the erasure of his body and soul. From the past to the present to the near future, there would not be any remnant soul or relics of Nesario that would be passed down. The voice of Nesario's remnant soul suddenly changed from shock and anger to a low, pleading whine. He was like a giant dragon that only existed on a blackboard and was being erased bit by bit. The dragons were silent. Every dragon and every dragon descendant looked at this scene with complicated emotions. When the last piece of darkness that belonged to Nesario disappeared from the vision of all existences, the Dragon Sleep Temple suddenly shook violently. Then, in less than 3 seconds, a dragon head that looked exactly like Nesario's appeared at the highest point of the temple. It was also Nesario's head, but its essence and soul were completely different. That was purely a symbol of warning to the dragons. All of a sudden, thousands of giant dragons began to raise their heads and roar at the sky. The roar contained a dragon language song. In other words, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. There was a cause and effect. The end of the path of rebellion was destruction. With the dragon's roar, the ritual ended. Duque had always had a question about these complicated rituals of the dragons. I'm here to take the prize, why are you wasting so much of my time? However, when Alexstrasza put a pin on Duque's chest under the witness of the other 3 dragon kings, Duque's expression suddenly changed. This is, congratulations, Guardian Duke Marcus. Yes, that's right. The same line of words was marked in the system prompt. After the unanimous agreement of the 4 color dragons of the Dragon Sleep Temple, the dragons have determined that you have inherited the mantle of Mediv and become the guardian of Azeroth, temporary. Although you are a temporary worker, due to your outstanding performance in the dragon ceremony, you have obtained above-average military power. As long as the target is not a native of Azeroth, or is identified as an enemy by the Dragon Sleep Temple, you can summon the dragon army of the Dragon Sleep Temple to fight for you unconditionally at any time and on any occasion. According to your current reputation in the Dragon Slumber Godly Shrine, you can summon 1 dragon squad at a time, including 1 10,000-year-old giant dragon, 5,000-year-old dragons, 3 dragonoid elite captains, and 500 dragonoid elite guards. Before Duque could finish being happy, Alexstrasza suddenly said, Duque, I actually received a message. There are demons preparing to attack your Karazhan. Faster thief. Chapter 634. Without the Queen's reminder, Duque would not have realized that his nest was not only unstable, it was on fire. Previously he had temporarily left Karazhan. One reason was that Duque did not have enough strength to clean up Karazhan, and the other was that Stormwind City was about to be destroyed. If Duque did not come out, Lang would die in Stormwind City. Did Duque not value Karazhan? Of course not. Duque did not care about his fiefdom. He could lose the Watchtower, the Reedridge Mountain and the Elven Forest, but he could not give up Karazhan. At the start of the Third War of the Dark Portal, What enemies would appear on the Azeroth continent? Undead that had come back from the dead, wailing banshees and gargoyles that filled the sky, lava hounds that were 3 stories tall, fire elementals that were as tall as a small mountain. These terrifying existences that transcended the mortal world could not be dealt with by simple swords. The most reliable thing that Duque had was his magic. The path to the Dalajan had been blocked. The only thing he could rely on was Karazhan. Now that he suddenly heard that Karazhan was in danger, it would be strange if Duque was not excited. Seeing Duke almost jump up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, Alexstrasza finally felt a sense of satisfaction at having turned the tables. Do you know who it is? Seeing Duque's nervous look, the queen's nose was almost up to the sky. She had a look of beg me. If you beg me I'll tell you. Look. Duque clenched his teeth and turned around. Let's go. Alexstrasza was anxious. She did not care about the other 3 dragon kings watching, and put a hand on Duque's shoulder. Brat, let's talk. Suddenly, space twisted at a high speed and the scenery in front of him blurred. In that moment, Duque found himself in a circular pavilion hanging on the east side of the Dragon Sleep Temple. It was not accurate to say that it was a pavilion. It should be said that this seemed like a pavilion, but it was actually a small subspace attached to the Dragonbone Wastelands. It looked like the scenery of the Dragonbone Wastelands, but in reality, it was impossible to get out of the pavilion by walking to it. Alexstrasza put her hands on her hips and puffed out her cheeks. I was just teasing you. Is it worth losing your temper? Duque, if the Dragon Sleeping Temple is attacked, will you feel at ease? The queen had to think that Duque was right. Karazhan is safe for the time being. Then I have to rush back to prepare. No. I think it's better if you prepare here. Why? The queen tilted her head. Her yellow vertical pupils had a strange color to them. She strode forward and said, let me examine your body and magic circuits. Without any hesitation the queen made her move. There was no boundary between a woman and a man at all. A pair of powerful palms touched him just like that. Duque shuddered. Any mortal would not be unresponsive when touched by a pair of hands with draconic might. It was the fear of a giant dragon sharpening its claws next to one's ear. It was as if the big sister of the dragon race and the boss of the dragon race would be disassembled into parts if she accidentally shook her hand. A fragile body. But it's strange. You've also experienced many battles, but there are no internal injuries. The shaping of the magic circuits is also very perfect. The queen frowned. I don't know if I should give you this advice, but after seeing your perfect use of the magic circuits, I think. What do you think? You can try asking Malygos for Light of the Stars and Moon. Light of the Stars and Moon? The King of Magic controls the prototypes of all magic models in this world, and Light of the Stars and Moon can allow a morning star wizard to quickly grow into a radiant moon wizard in a short period of time. As long as you have enough control over the magic circuits, there will be no side effects. However, Light of the Stars and Moon does not come without a price. Duque suddenly grabbed Alexstrasza's shoulder. Although the queen's arm was very flexible and felt good, Duque did not care about it at all. What's the price? The queen's expression became very solemn. Malygos was given the duty of guarding all magic in the world of Azeroth by the Titans, so he thinks that he is the master of magic in Azeroth. For nearly 1,000 years he has been very dissatisfied with the wanton abuse of magic by humans and the High Elves. Duque was non-committal. If there's a price you need to pay for Light of the Stars and Moon, it's Malygos' hatred. He believes that only a perfect creature like the dragon race is qualified to obtain Light of the Stars and Moon. If you force it, he will probably give it to you, but he will immediately hate you. This is enough to cancel out all the good feelings he has for you, and it will put your path of magic in great danger. The queen did not even notice the sarcastic smile on the corner of Duque's mouth. At the end of the day she did not know why, but she wanted Duque to owe her a favor, or to return part of the favor. She knew very well that if she was willing to pay one of her dragon eggs for Duque, Malygos' expression would definitely be much better. However, things seemed to be developing in a direction she did not expect. Can Malygos burn my magic circuit from thousands of miles away? Of course not, but can he hide in his lair and forbid me from using any magic from thousands of miles away? No, but that, if he hates me, will it affect your or the Sleeping Dragon Temple's impression of me? Of course not, but then that's enough. I'll go find Maligos right now. Duque's attitude that everything was okay almost angered Alexstrasza to death. That was Maligos, the king of magic. Ordinary people would already tremble at the mention of his name, and you actually don't care about offending an ancient dragon guardian? Don't even mention the bear's heart and leopard's gall. Duque, are you trying to defy the heavens? Seeing that Duque was really going to find Maligos, Alexstrasza laughed angrily. Hey Duque, you really don't need me to help you? For my sake, at least Maligos won't do anything to you. If you go and negotiate on your own, you'll become a mortal enemy. In the future, if Maligos doesn't like you and hunts you down, I won't care. Duque waved his hand. Don't worry, I don't care about a mere Maligos. In any case, that guy would be an idiot who would enter a dungeon and be killed by the players like a boss. Duque's next words were, in the entire dragon race, the only one I care about is you, Alexstrasza. In the future, you're the only one left of the 5 guardian dragons. I'd be stupid to farm the reputation of those who are destined to kneel. He did not realize at all that his words had a serious meaning. When the Red Dragon Queen heard this, there was a special emotional overtone. For a moment the queen froze in place. Chapter 635. Duque had underestimated the queen's love for her eggs. First of all, a rough man was destined to be unable to understand a woman's feelings. Even before transmigrating, not many women were willing to donate their eggs. Alexstrasza was not only a female dragon, but also a dragon queen with a god-level life ability. Her dragon eggs could even make the scarce and nearly extinct blue dragons flourish again. One could only imagine how precious such a dragon egg was. In the end, Alexstrasza told a small lie. If she used her dragon egg to exchange for it, not only could she avoid Maligos' wrath, but she could also exchange for a higher level, Breaking Dawn fire. As the name suggested, this meant that in addition to advancing to a Radiant Moon Mage, Duque could also lay the foundation for advancing to a Breaking Dawn Mage. In the world of magic, nothing could be achieved in a single leap, unless you had a god of magic as a parent. For example, Medivh had a guardian mother, Aegwynn. Apart from Medivh, which mage did not have stars in their eyes? They would either be like Antonidas until they had one foot in the coffin, or they would be like Khadgar in the original world, using countless near-death experiences in exchange for power. Even now, this opportunity to exchange for starfire was obtained by Duque at the cost of facing one of the strongest and evilest existences in the world, Nesario. The queen never expected. No, she was overthinking things. She thought that Duque was giving up the chance to step into the Breaking Dawn realm in order to protect her precious dragon egg. She couldn't help but have a good impression of him rise. Because of his ignorance, Duque was very calm. Under Alexstrasza's gaze, he actually went to look for Maligos. At the highest level of the Wormrest Shrine, Izrazil had already retreated. Nozdormu was using the power of time to rebuild Nesario's ashes into a model of Nesario's remains. Only Maligos had his eyes squinted as if he was pretending to sleep. In fact, he had a premonition that Duque would come to him for a reward. You're here. Maligos seemed to be struggling to keep his eyelids open. I'm here. Duque was indifferent. Come. Sure. A blue wave enveloped the man and the dragon, and in the blink of an eye, Duque found himself in another pavilion hanging outside the dragon slumber shrine. Evidently, the 5 dragon aspects each had their own independent space in the Wormrest Shrine. The space of Maligos, the king of magic, seemed a little different. If Alexstrasza had deliberately shrunk her space into a small room so that Duque wouldn't feel uncomfortable, then Maligos was just showing Duque the original space. It was a huge space with a diameter of at least 10 kilometers. Duque was on a lone island in the middle of the Azure Ocean. There was nothing around him except seawater. In the sky, there seemed to be a supreme existence of divine might. The thick white clouds rolled and surged, making it impossible to see what was above the clouds. Somehow he felt that there was a mysterious existence there that could destroy everything in the world. Its nobility and greatness were above everything else in the world of Azeroth. That was how it should be, Duque replied with a poker face and dead fish eyes. But what an imposing manner. However, all that was left was the imposing manner. Alexstrasza, who had the most authority in the Wormrest Shrine, was protecting me. Did you dare to eat me? Duque looked up at the sky with such a terrible expression and thought to himself, Ah, the ancients said that only idiots like to stand at the highest point and wait to be struck by lightning. The ancients were not lying to me. Malygos was very upset. It was not the first time he had seen Duque, but it was the only time he had looked Duque in the eye. He had never believed in humans, or rather he was suspicious and even hostile to all races other than dragons. The first time Duque had approached him through Isra in order to fight against Nesario, it was because of the situation. It was a coincidence that Duque had gone through so much to rescue Alexstrasza. Anyway, it was still the four of them who had to fight against the Wing of Death. Duque had magically discovered that Nesario had disguised himself as a human and sneaked into the Lordaeron palace. Duque had used him in turn to lure the four of them to finally eliminate Nesario, and the credit was still due to the four of them. Without the other Dragon Kings, it would have been impossible to kill the rebellious Black Dragon King. Anyway, in Malygos's eyes, creatures other than dragons were always secondary. Duque had already obtained a transcendent position in the Wormrest Shrine without doing any real work at all. Seeing that he had finally killed his great enemy and avenged his spouse after 10,000 years, Malygos did not mind giving this little human a little gift. However, Duque's neither humble nor arrogant behavior made him very upset. Humph. A cold snort sounded like a thunderclap from the 9 heavens. Duque was still the combination of dead fish eyes and a poker face. Is this the attitude you have when begging the great king of magic to bestow a reward? With this sentence, Duque sentenced Malygos to death. You want me to work for you? You've taken your revenge and vented your anger, and you still have the nerve to make things difficult for me? You don't want to give me a reward, right? Hehe. When you become a boss later, I'll get rid of you and take it myself. Duque cursed in his heart while expressing his attitude. Hehe, you can choose not to give it. If not, then I'll leave first. Can you please open a spatial door? Duque's casual attitude made Malygos even more angry. Insignificant human. Recognize your identity. In front of my power you are nothing. The clouds were boiling fiercely as if the wrath of the heavens would fall in the next moment. The rage of the Dragon King was not a joke. The terrifying aura that flowed out of Malygos's shrine room made the giant dragons that had yet to disperse in the shrine tremble. What the hell? Who had angered the Dragon King Malygos? Alexstrasza could not help but yell across the void, "Hey! Malygos, what the hell are you doing? Why are you yelling at my savior?" Malygos' anger subsided a little. After all, this was the Dragon Slumber Shrine, and he was still very afraid of Alexstrasza, who had recovered her strength. I'm just teaching a human how to be polite to dragons. What the hell are you doing? Duque is an honored guest of our Dragon Slumber Shrine. We invited him to witness the ceremony today. We agreed to let him take over as a guardian and you have a part in it. What's wrong with you all of a sudden? Malygos did not speak. Only Duque knew that in the end it was because his strength was too low. So low that even if he asked for a reasonable reward, it would be seen as a charity. In the past 800 years, when had the previous guardians Aegwin and Medivh been bullied? It was easy for a demigod to make other existences forget their original identity and instinctively respect them. Chapter 636. Come to think of it, Duque was a mere Morningstar mage, but he had managed to kill the greatest nightmare of the dragons in 10,000 years, the demigod Nesario. It would be unreasonable for the other dragons not to be jealous. Was there anything more heaven-defying than Duque's feat in this world? Of course there was a deeper reason. Malygos had not finished venting his anger. He had once been the strongest of the 5 dragon aspects, but his wife, child, and almost all his subordinates had died in one go. He had been a single dog, no, a single dragon for 10,000 years. He had finally managed to kill his enemy, but not only was the enemy unrepentant, the one who had stolen his limelight was a lowly race with no ability that he looked down upon. Rationally, Malygos knew that he should be grateful to Duque. When it came to love, he couldn't control his temper. He was a little crazy, but his madness was more directed at Nesario and the Black Dragon army. But he had nowhere to vent his anger. He could not attack his own people. Duque, who had appeared in front of him, felt like he had been implicated. After slightly intimidating Malygos, Alexstrasza quickly smoothed things over and sent a secret message to Duque. Sorry Duque, he wasn't like this before. He used to be very happy and cheerful and did not mind spreading magic to other races. It's just that after his spouse died. Alexstrasza quickly said a lot of things, all of which were ignored by Duque. What made Duque's mind wander was something else. That was the course of history. Duque did not know if he could defend against Nizul's next attack. If he could, then it was likely that there would not be a cross-world expedition against Draenor. However, regardless of whether there would be an expedition or not, the Burning Legion's plot against Azeroth would not be extinguished. The Third War at the Dark Portal was bound to come. If the Third Battle of the Dark Portal had anything to do with Malygos, it would have to do with a lot. In the Third War, it was easy to associate it with the undead army of the Calamity Army. However, without the Ice Dragon Army, which was the pinnacle of the undead army, no matter how many skeletons and zombies the humans turned into, they would be nothing in the face of true extraordinary power. It was just that there were too many of them and it was more troublesome. Yes, it was just that troublesome. However, with the Ice Dragon Army, it would directly change from quantity to quality. Where did the Ice Dragon Army of the undead come from? Wasn't it the Blue Dragon Army that was killed in of Nisario's betrayal? The leader of the Ice Dragon Army, Sindagosa, was definitely one of the best generals under the Lich King. Who was Sindagosa? Was there a need to ask? It was the dead wife of Malygos, the king of magic. Duke came back to his senses just in time to hear Alexstrasza's pleading tone. Duke, I know Malygos's attitude isn't good, but he's still a good person and he's ready to resume his duties as the dragon aspect. Why don't you give in to him this time and I'll owe you a small favor. Alright. Alexstrasza breathed a sigh of relief when Duque agreed. Just now, Duque refused to answer no matter what. She thought that Duque was going to have a heaven and earth collision with Malygos in the Dragon Slumber Temple. She didn't think that Duque would win, but since both sides were on the same side, she really didn't want them to have a conflict. Just then Malygos said, "All right, for Alexstrasza's sake, I won't argue with you about your attitude. I know you want the power of magic, so show me your magic skills, mortal. If you can satisfy me, I'll let you instantly become a radiant moon wizard." What's wrong with that? Duke's back suddenly straightened, and the corner of his mouth hooked up into a mysterious arc. If one was familiar enough with Duque, they would know who Duque was going to trap again. Fortunately, Duque let Malygos go this time for the sake of the Red Dragon Queen. Duque had too many ways to force this big blue clown into a dead end. For example, when Malygos gave up monitoring the magic in the world during his mental disorder, Kuel Salus and the Dalajan's dark experiments. What steel refiner, what forbidden human body refinement technique, what biochemical experiment that could poison all living creatures within 1,000 miles. Once Malygos found out about these things, the old blue dragon would go crazy. There was no need for the Scourge army. He could kill these two holy lands of magic by himself. Of course, Alexstrasza didn't know that Duque had so many bad ideas in his stomach, but she was a woman with amazing intuition. She suddenly realized that Duque really had a way to kill Malygos like he killed Nisario. Feeling that Duque had finally let go of the idea in his heart, the queen's heart was filled with mixed feelings. Duque thought to himself, all right, seeing that your wife is dead, it's understandable. I also want to dig a hole for that fool. I'll bear with it. Duque suddenly raised his head and stared at Malygos in the sky. There was still a mysterious smile on his lips. Do you want to see my magic skills? Sure. Let me show you the right path. Duque raised his hand. For a moment, Malygos almost wanted to smash Duque's face with magic bombs. But when Malygos saw clearly what Duque had conjured with magic power, he fell silent. Duque injected his distant memories into the system. It was a scene from the Battle of the Frozen Crown in the game. It was a memory of Sindagosa from the gorgeous cutscenes. Like an irresponsible visionary, Duque gave the system Alpha mission. I want to restore a magic construct called Sindagosa that will convince Malygos. Then the system elf perfectly injected bones, tendons, blood and flesh into Duque's fantasy. In the void, as the magic power in the magic circuit in Duque's body was rapidly consumed, the illusion of a huge bone dragon appeared in Malygos' eyes. At first, the illusion of the bone dragon looked like a lizard skeleton at the level of a primary school student's drawing. However, it quickly turned from a chaotic mess into a specimen with its bones clearly visible. Every bump on his skin. Every cartilage that connected each other. The proportions of every bone. At this time, Malygos couldn't help but tremble slightly. This wasn't the end. If what happened before was just a conceptual reorganization of the biological specimen, then what happened next was a pure rebirth of the concept of magic. The huge bone dragon illusion in Duque's hand, which had become 10 meters long, had begun to have the aura of a magic circuit. One by one, new magic circuits were being constructed in this phantom bone dragon. Chapter 637. Duque could actually construct a new magic circuit in an illusion that he had created out of thin air. Many dragon geniuses had trouble constructing a good magic circuit in the body that they were most familiar with, not to mention constructing a magic circuit in an illusion that they were not even familiar with. And from the looks of it, Duque was not making it up. This was because there was an aura that Malygos was extremely familiar with flowing in the newly born magic circuit. It was the aura of Syndagosa's most specialized frost magic circuit. How could you possibly know what Syndagosa was good at? In the independent space of the temple, the rolling clouds in the sky had already solidified. Similarly, the expression of Malygos, who had poked his head out of the clouds, had also solidified. Neltharion's betrayal 10,000 years ago was the greatest shame of the dragons of Azeroth. Even in the records of the dragons, only the names and numbers of the dead were recorded. Other than those ancient dragons that could be counted, no one would know anything about the Blue Dragon Queen. Malygos had just been to the natural mausoleum of his spouse, and there were no traces of anyone touching it at all. Then how did Duque know that Syndagosa was a frost dragon, and not an all-elemental dragon like him? Did Alexstrasza tell Duque? Duque's performance continued. Not only did the body of the bone dragon, which was almost identical to Syndagosa, begin to be surrounded by magic circuits, but white muscles could also be seen growing on the white bones, which were becoming thicker and thicker. Every layer of flesh and blood covered the dragon's body would have a corresponding bloodline and magic circuit. The mana in Duque's body continued to be consumed, but with the help of the system elf, not even the slightest bit of mana was wasted. Every bit of mana was used to create the illusory Syndagosa. This move of Duque's was almost a materialization of his imagination. Under his control, the body of the blue dragon continued to grow, becoming more than 50 meters long. When he finished constructing the flesh and blood, a layer of unbelievably beautiful blue dragon skin and scales began to cover the flesh and blood. At the same time, smaller and finer branches of magic circuits were also being laid down. Seeing this, Malygos's heart skipped a beat. Humans and high elves were very superficial in the use of magic. It was already impressive that they were able to construct a few large magic cycles in their bodies and form a circuit. They could not care about the minor details at all. Not to mention control, they might not even be able to sense it on their own. However, they did not know that this level of control was necessary for a powerful spellcaster. How could a main circuit with 36 branches of the same thickness compare with a main circuit with 108 branches of the same thickness? It was not just the number and thickness of the branches, but also whether or not they could build a filter to filter out the impurities in the circuit, and how to circulate the pure magic power and discharge the impurities. Everything was necessary for a real senior rank sorcerer. Be it humans or elves, those radiant moon mages had actually done all of this intentionally or unintentionally. Only then did they have the perfect magic circuit that countless mages envied and hated. That was why Malygos was inexplicably surprised. How could Duque use such low mana to perform micro-operations that even those with abundant mana couldn't do? Soon Malygos could not be bothered to look at all this. Looking at this illusory blue dragon that had the same appearance as his former spouse, Malygos could not help but mutter his spouse's name, Syndagosa. The illusion in front of him was so realistic, and the mana flowing in the illusion was so familiar and nostalgic. He almost thought that his spouse, who had slept for 10,000 years, had awakened and obtained a new life. Normally, Malygos would have taken it as Duque's blasphemy against his mate. But when he asked Duque to display his talent in magic, he saw his former spouse. Malygos had mixed feelings. There were no words. Naturally, there was no familiar voice or smile. Even so, Malygos still felt that a part of his heart that had been missing for 10,000 years had been mended and healed. He suddenly realized that Duque seemed to have played a more important role in this revenge plan than he had imagined. He also suddenly realized that this insignificant human that he had always ignored and looked down on had some kind of fine control of magic that even he could not compare to. Malygos let out a long sigh. Duque stopped his mana output and the illusory Syndagosa's movements stiffened. Malygos felt as if he had been struck by a whip, pulling him back from his memories to reality. That's right. This was not his spouse after all. Enough, make it disappear, Malygos said calmly. Duque rubbed his hand and Syndagosa disappeared from the void. Malaiko's aggressive aura was gone, but he was still stubborn. I agreed to let you be the acting guardian, so naturally I recognized your strength. From the moment Nasario was killed, I didn't treat you as an ordinary human. But as a guardian, even if you're a proxy, your strength is too unsightly. Take this thing and get lost. Don't be an eyesore. With that, he flapped his dragon wings and a meteor-like bright object descended from the sky. Whoosh! With a sharp sound of breaking wind, it was clearly going to smash Duque's head open, but the moment Duque dodged, it was fixed at a place less than 3 centimeters in front of Duque's eyebrows. Faster, see? You did it on purpose. Malaiko's returned a contemptuous look. Yes. I did it on purpose. Fine, you win. I've earned my moral integrity by showing off my muscles. What strife? Why not? Duque grabbed the light of the stars and moon that was floating in front of his eyebrows. He had wanted to ask Malaiko's how to use this thing. There was no need to ask immediately. The moment he grabbed it, the light of the stars and moon, which was emitting a mysterious glow, fused into his palm and rushed into his magic circuit with a domineering aura. Ba-thump. Duque clearly heard the incomparably strong beating of his heart. Ba-thump. It was the sound of his heartbeat suddenly slowing down by 10 times. It was like a drum that had been stretched out countless times. That feeling made Duque feel very strange. The next second, Duque suddenly let out a scream. He felt as if a huge ball of blood the size of a tennis ball was being pumped out of his aorta. Chapter 638. Even though Duque was a university student who had taken a basic course on the physiological structure of the human body, he had never thought that mages were more like a magical existence that fused 2 and 3 dimensions together. What appeared in his field of vision was the same outer shell of the body, but a completely different internal structure. In the 3-dimensional domain, the brain controlled the functions of his body, directing the operation of every internal organ, making the lungs breathe, the heart pump blood, and the liver detoxify. In the illusory vision of the 2-dimensional world, the mind that extended from the will controlled the magic circuit, and the flow of magic in the mental domain was more like the countless subdivided roots of a large tree, except for the root at the end that was used to absorb the elemental power from the outside world. The rest of the circuit would eventually take the shape of a ring. It was a continuous cycle, and it was constantly building a stronger and more powerful circuit. This was not a complicated process. The entire process could be said to be simple and crude. The light of stars and moon that crashed into Duque's body was simply pressing down on Duque's body with tremendous force. There was nothing in the world that could be achieved in a single leap. To be able to achieve it in one step only meant that one had made thorough preparations. It sounded like reaching the radiant moon level was such a wonderful thing. But in reality, was it really that easy? In order to deal with the third war at the Dark Portal, and even in order to face the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth generation Lich Kings that might appear, Duque had long since built a magic foundation. This was like building a skyscraper that needed to be built with a foundation. If Duque's previous magic circuit was third-rate, it would be like using a matchstick to act as the pier of a bridge across the sea, and it would turn into dregs with one push. The magic circuit model that he used was almost the best model that he could find in this era. With the incomparably thick, arcane throne as the cornerstone, phoenix flames and ice crown flew at the same time. Not only that, with the perfect connection between him and the system elf, the mind control system that Duque built was completely beyond this era. Precisely because he was clear about the development of mages in the original history, as well as the usage and power of new magic, Duque's creation of the magic circuit was expansive. He strived to make sure that the magic flowing in the circuit was pure enough and that a perfect balance between the 3 types of magic could be achieved, which was in line with the magic rules of this world. Duque's eyes were flashing with arcane brilliance as he looked into his body. Although the light of stars and moon was very rough, the magic circuit that was expanding and thickening showed unparalleled flexibility. The inner wall of the aging magic circuit was peeling off rapidly, and the residue that had lost its purpose flowed along with the high-speed impact of the magic power to the smaller, finer end branches of the circuit, and was expelled from the body through the root-like filaments. The walls of the circuits in his body were like a sponge, greedily absorbing the light of the stars and moon that came from outside his body. The new light spread to every circuit in his body along with the flow of magic power. It was a strange beauty of the rising sun, dispelling all the darkness on the earth and replacing everything with light. At this moment, Duque suddenly ran into trouble. When the power of light of the stars and moon broke into the circuits of Arcane Throne and Crown of Ice, there was no problem. But Phoenix Flame didn't seem to match. It wasn't that Malygos had tricked Duque. Light of the stars and moon, as the original magic power of the world of Azeroth, could perfectly match it as long as it was the magic power system of this world. What was wrong was the environment here. This was the Dragon Sleep Temple. It was fine if it was a neutral power, but wasn't advancing the power of the Phoenix in the Dragon Sleep Temple, which was the holy land of the dragons. As if provoked, the power of the Dragon Sleep Temple began to invade Duque's body in turn. Its purpose was very clear: to destroy the magic circuit of the Phoenix that had provoked the power of the dragons. The dragon power that came from all directions carried a faint draconic might, and it not only continuously impacted the barrier of Duque's consciousness. It also crazily destroyed everything related to the Phoenix: the circuit, magic power, and the body cells that were permeated with the power of the Phoenix flame. At this moment, Duque was almost against the mysterious power of the entire Dragon Sleep Temple. Ugh! Caught off guard, Duque vomited a large mouthful of blood on the spot. Not good. I miscalculated. Malygos' eyelids twitched. At this moment he was hesitant. As the king of magic, he certainly understood what had happened to Duque. If he didn't do anything, Duque's circuit would collapse and he would become a useless person in the world of magic. He hesitated for a tenth of a second, but he still stretched out his claws and was ready to help Duque. Whether it was for public or private reasons, he couldn't let Duque die here. However, there was an existence faster than him. As the big sister of the dragon aspects, Alexstrasza ignored his will and forcibly broke through his space. Of course, this had a lot to do with him not objecting. This also reflected the importance of Duque in her eyes. She actually rushed in at the risk of falling out with Malygos. Idiot! Give up your Phoenix circuit, I'll give you something better. Chapter 639. These were networks of various sizes. These were the newly born magic circuits. Magic power that was many times stronger than a morning star began to circulate inside. It flowed endlessly, surged, and never stopped. Even if Duque's life stopped, as long as there was still a will controlling it, the magic circuits could still operate endlessly and eternally. Perhaps the undead in the future did not need to be disturbed by the characteristics of a physical body and could focus on the magic circuits. That was why there were so many liches and great wizards. If Duque was really a cultivation maniac who pursued mysterious power, he would not be able to achieve eternal life. Perhaps he would also walk the evil path that many wizards had taken in history. Let's get back to the present. After Alexstrasza destroyed his Phoenix Flames magic circuit, Duque's situation did not completely improve. Instead, it showed signs of worsening. It was not that the flame circuit that the Red Dragon Queen had created for Duque was not good, but it was similar to the problems that Duque had encountered in the past. It was because it was too good that it began to overbearingly occupy the share of all the magic circuits in Duque's body. Alexstrasza frowned. She had also discovered the problem. She could build all of Duque's magic circuits according to the template she could make, but this would cause Duque's attributes to go from a perfect balance of multiple attributes to a single fire attribute. In the future, Duque could only mix fire. At some point, Malygos came before the human and dragon. Alexstrasza, is this human very important to you? The queen gritted her teeth and nodded. Recalling the bits and pieces of Duque, Malygos rarely changed his view of humans. Perhaps I really underestimated the usefulness of this human? Perhaps you owe me a favor. With that, the humanoid Malygos extended his hand to Duque. His hand met Alexstrasza's and pressed on Duque's chest. It was also a magical concept invasion, but the circuit that was replaced this time was different. Antonida's Crown of Ice was destroyed and replaced with Malygos' unknown ice circuit. No, it wasn't just the ice element. Even Duque's Arcane Throne was being modified. It continued to expand and expand. It was a terrible feeling. Duque opened his mouth wide, and his jaw was so wide that his throat could be seen. He wanted to shout, he wanted to roar, but he couldn't utter a single word. Behind was fire and in front was ice. This was the true meaning of ice and fire. However, in order to endure the two heavens of ice and fire, one's body had to be strong enough. The system notification rang out non-stop. Warning. Warning. Extremely powerful fire and ice magic circuit patterns discovered. The two magic circuit models demanded a high amount of magic power from the Olympian mathematical circuit. Correspondingly, the power will also increase correspondingly. Secondly, to create such a powerful magic circuit, it also required an astronomical amount of magic power for humans. Most mortals wouldn't even consider this direction. For example, Sun King Anastrian used the power of the sun well to charge up. Without deducing how to use this power, how could he create the corresponding magic circuit model? In such a short time, not only did Duque deduce it, but in the eyes of the two dragon kings, this model was even more perfect than the models they could imagine and more suitable for Duque's body. They sucked in a breath of cold air. So there are real geniuses among humans. The two dragon kings thought at the same time. They looked at each other and immediately injected magic power without hesitation. This was the invasion of magic power, and it was almost a reverse of primary and secondary cooperation. The golden flame magic power and the pure white frost magic power each drew a circle in Duque's body. On the other side, there was an additional pure arcane power that passed through Duque's body and was mobilized to the place that Duque wanted. As the foundation of the two major magic circuits, the arcane circuit that Duque used as the foundation was also continuously thickening, deepening and consolidating. Its construction speed even surpassed the sum of the two dragon kings. 3 huge compound circuits gradually took shape in Duque's body. Chapter 640. Closer. Even closer. So close that they almost overlapped. When the ice and fire circuits came into contact with the arcane circuits, there was no impact like when Mars collided with Earth. Instead, there was a strange harmony. As if they had gone through thousands of calculations, the 3 circuits matched so perfectly that even Malygos, the king of magic, was surprised. It was not like the harmony of singing and the basic matching of the key could be deceived under the cover of the music. This was a true match that involved thousands of connection points of various sizes. This kind of coordination was completely beyond the scope of detection and correction by the human brain, or even the dragon brain. Even for a magic-type dragon aspect like Malygos, such a minor problem was not something he needed to consider. For him, the human body was too small as a vessel for magic. It would be a success if there was no leakage of magic that affected the body's functions on a large scale. However, there was no huge impact this time, nor was there any stiff feeling of mana splattering due to the mismatch. It was a complete fusion of water and milk. From the connection of the main circuit to the fusion of the branch circuits, there were more than thousands of collisions in this moment of contact. At this point in the construction of the magic circuit, the most dangerous moment had passed. What was left was the refinement gained from countless experiments, the understanding of the upper and lower limits of magic output, and the understanding of the amount of magic produced in the body. Of course, in the eyes of the two dragon kings, this was all that the light of the stars and moon could do. They did not expect that Duque did not stop there. Malygos was the first to discover the problem. Duque's magic circuit was too large even for a radiant moon wizard. Magic circuits were not static things. Wizards would further expand the circuit according to their casting needs. In other words, some branches that would affect the stability of the main circuit would be cut off. This kid, Duque, was obviously building his magic circuit with a Breaking Dawn wizard as the standard. He's really ambitious. Malygos could not help but laugh. Isn't that so? Without enough ambition, who would think of plotting against Nesario with the level of a Morning Star wizard? Alexstrasza smiled like a flower. You still want me to help him further? Malygos was a little displeased. Favors could not be owed endlessly. It was like a person who borrowed 1,000,000 yuan from the bank, and then immediately borrowed another 100 million yuan. Insatiable greed would be hated. At that moment, Duque, whose body was starting to stabilize, revealed what he had been plotting for a long time. I have news that a demon specializing in necromancy has his eyes on Syndagosa's remains. He probably wants to use dark magic to make Syndagosa into a bone dragon. Who dares? Like a dog whose tail had been stepped on, Malygos immediately blew his beard and glared. The commander of the Burning Legion, the deceiver, kill Jaden. Duque slowly slandered Chairman Dan. I'm not lying. In the future, when the Lich King resurrects Syndagosa and builds the Scourge army, wouldn't it be kill Jaden's idea? At this time, It was of utmost importance to have someone to speak up for him. Alexstrasza said, "It's been 10,000 years. In the past you didn't let Sindagosa return to the Dragonbone Waste because of Neltharion's hatred. Now that everything is over, it's only right to bring her and the remains of the other blue dragons back." The Dragonbone Waste was equivalent to the ancestral graves of the dragons. The ancestral graves were guarded by guardians. Malygos glanced at Duque. "Alright, you're right. Now you and I are even." With that, Malygos casually threw a spot of light into Duque's arms. He saw the system prompt. "Congratulations, host. You have obtained the Fire of Breaking Dawn, temporarily sealed, will be unsealed when your strength is sufficient. This is an extremely rare treasure in the world. With it, you will no longer have any obstacles in stepping into the Breaking Dawn realm." Duke was smashed by this sudden huge meat pie. He was in a state of blissful stupor and felt dizzy. Whether it was the possible Draenor expedition or the destined Third War of the Dark Portal, the power of mortals was no longer reliable. War was no longer something that could be settled by piling up the power of mortals. Only extraordinary power was the most reliable. Now it was like a pillow when he was sleepy. Duke didn't have a good impression of Malygos at first. Now even if this old blue dragon was a male, Duque had the urge to kiss him a few times. Suddenly, Duque's entire body was turned around. The first thing that came into view was that beautiful face with a hint of slyness. "Yo, no need to thank him. Just thank me." The red dragon queen puffed out the pair of giant cats in front of her chest and then made a proud expression. "Damn, I was quite touched just now. Now I don't feel anything." Duque was also speechless towards this ancient female dragon who made him feel angry and funny at the same time. She also didn't seem to understand the ways of the world. Are you trying to say that the debt between us is also settled?" Duque touched his nose. Alexstrasza displayed her proud queen's demeanor. She elegantly pressed her right hand on her sexy collarbone and raised her chin slightly. Her golden vertical pupils flashed with pride. "How is that possible? Saving my dragon egg, freeing me from my painful captivity. How can the insignificant light of stars and moon, and breaking dawn fire, compare? Don't tell me that someone as powerful as me is worth the same as a mere human breaking dawn wizard? Alright, what you said makes sense. I don't mind if you continue to owe me a favor." Duque rolled his eyes and shrugged. After nagging the queen for a while, Duque began to calm down and carefully feel the surging mana that had risen to the next level. A day later, a piece of news shocked the entire Lordaeron. The 17-year-old Duke Marcus had suddenly become a radiant moon wizard. The moment Duque stepped out of the portal, all the high-ranked wizards in Lordaeron sensed it. Morning stars, as the name suggested, were the radiance of their power. In the eyes of others they were just the light of the stars. Even though they had the ability to generate mana, it was extremely limited. Radiant moon was a completely different concept. Not to mention the quality, just the quantity alone was more than 100 levels higher than a morning star. On a cloudless night one could ignore the stars in the sky, but definitely not the moon that hung high in the sky. This was especially so when the radiant moon great wizard who was protecting Tarinas told him about Duque's advancement. He was stunned for a long time. Because be it humans, dwarves, or high elves, any radiant moon wizard would be respectfully addressed as Great Wizard. Chapter 641. A 17-year-old Archmage. Any mage who reached the Archmage level would definitely become an honored guest of any kingdom. He became a great wizard at the age of 17, and he was the only one in the past 1,000 years apart from Medivh. Countless people were so shocked that they lost their ability to speak. Isn't this too ridiculous? King Salas Trollbane was silent for a long time. Haha. If Duque is willing to admit that he's a dwarf, I'll definitely give him an honorary warrior medal from Iron Furnace Castle. Magni Bronzebeard laughed loudly. We dwarves don't have mages and Duque isn't a warrior. Muradin Bronzebeard mocked his elder brother. Why isn't he a dwarf? Gerben said regretfully. Of course the happiest was still Stormwind. Lang received the news. He knew very well that Stormwind was in the process of restoring its kingdom. The ministers of internal affairs obviously wanted to break a copper coin in half, but they still announced on the spot that Stormwind would hold a large banquet to celebrate Duque's promotion. Lang and Daelin had been discussing bilateral trade, but the two kings couldn't wait for Duque to return from the teleportation array and came together to welcome Duque. Halfway between the venue and the teleportation array, they met Duque, who was already surrounded by the Windrunner sisters. Duque. Lang was overjoyed. Weren't you going to the Dragon's Slumber Temple's ceremony? Why did you suddenly promote? I'm curious too, Daylin said. Duque sighed. Sigh, the Blue Dragon King Maligos is very grateful that I helped him avenge his wife's death. He dragged me along and insisted on teaching me some magic experience. Since the King of Magic is so kind, I can't refuse. I accidentally leveled up. On Duque's right, Aurelia had a hard time holding it in, but she was a sensible woman and barely held back her laughter. On the left, Sasha couldn't hold it in. She covered her mouth secretly because she was afraid that she would accidentally laugh and cause internal injuries. 2 minutes ago, Duque had just told them that he had shamelessly asked Maligos to return the favor, and then something had happened. Alexstrasza had protected him with her life, which was why he had been promoted with the help of the 2 Dragon Kings. Now that he was in front of the 2 kings, how did it become the proud Blue Dragon King who was kneeling down and licking his boots to promote him? Sasha was not someone who was good at hiding her emotions. Aurelia also had her flaws, but King Dahlin did not care. What Dailin cared about was the fact that Duque had advanced. Duke Marcus's rise to power was legendary in the entire alliance and even the entire human world. In this legend, the only fly in the ointment was Duque's personal strength. Although Duque also had the battle record of killing a sword sage, his combat power was obviously lower than that of Uther, Andoin, and Antonidas. Now Duque's last shortcoming was made up for. What was presented in front of Dailin was the perfect Duque. Dailin was complimenting him, but no one knew what he was thinking. On the other side, Andoin had also rushed over. He had been attending another meeting and had galloped here with Mograine. Without saying anything, he went up and gave Linley a bear hug. Ahem. I'm going to die. Let go. You orc in human skin, Duque cursed. Ha! Laughter was heard everywhere. It was a joy to be able to bully a newly advanced archmage. Lang was gratified. Duque's timely promotion had given him hope of reviving the Storm Royal mages. Many of the mages that Duque had won over with the Karazhan library had secretly complained that Duque did not have enough time to guide them. There were also some who saw that Duque's level was not high and had other thoughts. All of this was solved with Duque's promotion. Not every mage apprentice or low-level mage could receive guidance from Antonidas, let alone the Sun King Anastrian, who would not teach outsiders. Being able to receive guidance from a Radiant Moon Archmage was the ultimate goal of most mage apprentices with potential. He had thought that Stormwind would not be able to recover in the field of mystery after losing Medivh, but now it seemed that was not the case. As long as Duque could become a Breaking Dawn mage before the age of 50, then Stormwind's position in the field of mystery would be as solid as a rock. Unfortunately, Duque had told Lang that Karazhan was a little unstable. Otherwise, Lang would be willing to celebrate for 3 to 5 days. However, this did not affect the banquet tonight. The second day of the 3rd year of the Dark Portal. The New Year's banquet had just been held last night. Most of the nobles did not expect that there would be another grand banquet soon. A grand banquet usually required a lot of preparation, but since the 25th of December, there would be banquets almost every day. As long as one could afford it, it was as luxurious as one could ask for. Standing at the entrance of the banquet hall of the Stormwind State Guest House, King Lang Andoin, and the protagonist of the night, Duque, received the blessings of every guest. Congratulations, Your Excellency Marcus. No one expected Prince Arthas to come from Rotterdam. Today Arthas was dressed splendidly. The black evening gown custom-made by the royal tailor was perfect for him. Although Arthas was only 13 years old, his outstanding genes made him not only tall, but also had the potential to be a handsome guy. Thank you, Your Highness, Duque replied respectfully. Actually, I am not much younger than Your Excellency. If possible, I would still like to call you Brother Duque. You can call me by my name as well. Arthas's face was as handsome as a spring breeze, and it was difficult for anyone to resist her enthusiasm. All right then. Welcome, Arthas. The King Duque secretly channeled mana into his arms. At this moment, Duque was like an ogre. He gave Arthas a bear hug and made it hard for him to breathe. The 13-year-old had not developed well yet, and Arthas was defeated immediately. Everyone said that Duque was weak, but it did not seem like it. Arthas, who had been crushed by Duque's strength, finally managed to catch his breath. His face was red. "Sorry, my father is not feeling well today. He asked me to come and congratulate you on his behalf, Duque." Not feeling well? Was Tarina's feelings stifled? The leaders of the various kingdoms who heard this snickered. One by one the nobles came to congratulate Duque. Other than Kuel Salus and Gilnas who had left the alliance, all the leaders of the kingdoms came. The only unexpected guest was Crassus, who came with Ronan. After some small talk, Crassus said, "Duque, why don't you come and be Ronan's teacher?" Chapter 642. Duque was shocked. To be Ronan's teacher. That didn't seem right. Although there was no seniority in learning as long as you were of a lower level than the other party, regardless of whether you were 80 years old or 100 years old, you had to call someone senior. But a 17-year-old young man with a 20-year-old disciple, that's seen, not to mention that was Ronan. The famous example of a loser's counterattack in history, Ronan, who had no background but was almost at the level of a mage. If he took Ronan as his disciple, he felt that his moral integrity would be greatly reduced. Well, even Duque himself did not believe that he was a person of moral integrity for a long time. Duque told himself in his heart, "I even saved Lothar. What difference does it make if I take Ronan as my disciple?" However, he still had to put on an act. Duque said sincerely, "Ronan, after all, I have gone through life and death with you. Personally, I quite admire you. Perhaps I have enough achievements to boast to anyone, but my age is right there and I may not be more knowledgeable than you. Do you really want to be my disciple?" Ronan looked a little embarrassed. Duque was right, but so what? Duque's resume blinded all the mages. A 17-year-old Radiant Moon mage. Killed the Burning Legion's boss, Sargeras. Saved hundreds of thousands of Stormwind citizens. Transported 50,000 elite soldiers on an ice ship in one night. Became the Alliance's deputy commander at the age of 16. Led the army to conquer the entire Lordaeron continent and killed millions of orcs. Killed the Sacred Swordsman chief, destroyed a warlock. Saved the Red Dragon Queen, killed Nethario. Even though he had gone on adventures with Duque, Ronan knew very well that the one standing in front of him was a living legend of the Alliance. He put one hand on his chest and bowed. "No, Lord Marcus is too humble. Your courage is no less than Wuther the Lightbringer, who charged against 200,000 orcs with 12 riders. Your wisdom is enough to light up the entire Azeroth's starry sky. I, Ronan, sincerely hope to worship Lord Marcus as my master, to learn how to be a person, to learn wisdom and to learn the mysteries of magic." These words were definitely not thought up by Ronan himself. If Luo Ning was this good with words, he wouldn't have offended so many people in the first place. Duque shifted his gaze to Crassus's face. The human-shaped red dragon couldn't help but blush. "Damn you." He was just short of whistling and pretending to be innocent. Luo Ning panicked and tried to explain. "No. Lord Marcus, don't blame Lord Crassus. I was afraid that I would say something wrong, so I asked him for advice." This time it was Crassus' turn to laugh. "Don't underestimate our great hero, Duque. If he was such a petty person, no matter how great his achievements were, he wouldn't have been recognized by so many kings." In the direction Crassus was pointing. Sure enough, Luo Ning saw the officials of the 9 great kingdoms chatting merrily and wittily. This was a private banquet, but the dignitaries of various countries had come. What was their purpose? This had long since surpassed simple benefits. It was more of a recognition of Duke Marcus. At this moment, Luo Ning's eyes were filled with indescribable envy. This expression lasted for 2 seconds, and then he turned around and bowed deeply towards Duque. "I ask Lord Marcus to accept me as a disciple. I might not be able to become a great hero like you, but I still hope that one day I can become a great arcana master on par with Lord Marcus." "Good. I agree. However, calling him Lord Marcus was too distant. You can call me Teacher Duque in the future." "Understood, Teacher Duque." Seeing the super awesome person whose name would go down in history actually take him as his master, Duque felt his bones go numb. Even his footsteps were a bit light. After Luo Ning left, Aurelia, dressed in evening clothes, couldn't help but ridicule Duque. "Hey, Duque, is taking Luo Ning as a disciple really something to be happy about?" Wintessa also came over. "Yes. I feel that he's a bit special in arcane magic, but not necessarily outstanding. Don't true geniuses have already shown their talents long ago?" "Oh no. Duque pretended to shake the index finger of his right hand mysteriously. Rather than doubt, you should believe in my foresight. Speaking of foresight, the Windrunner sisters put their hands on their hips. On this point they really had to admire Duque. He really made a mistake when using people. Even bringing Marion when saving the Red Dragon Queen could not be said to be a mistake, because judging from how Duque had backfired on Nesario, perhaps Duque had predicted this from the beginning. Duque did not know if he could train Luoning well. After all, in the original history, there were 3 great pharaoh of the younger generation: Khadgar, Luoning and Jaina. One became a ghost, one seemed to have been robbed of his role by someone and became a bit unknown, and the last one was still a lowly who had not yet expired. Duque silently muttered in his heart, "This is the world's fault." After the Second World War at the Dark Portal, Duque still felt that the world did not seem to have changed as much as he had imagined. However, with this abominable transmigrator stirring up trouble, things seemed to be developing in a strange direction. On the other side, Dailin and Lang seemed to be talking about something, and then Andoin also went over to join in. Looking at the 3 guys who were beaming with joy, Duque suddenly had a feeling that these 3 guys were going to cause trouble. Suddenly shivering, Duque had an ominous premonition in his heart. Sure enough, in the next second 3 burly animals came together. Duque pulled Luoning over as a shield. "Yo, why are the 3 of you here together?" "Just in time, let me introduce you, this is my new disciple Luoning. He is extremely talented in arcane magic." Seeing the 3 nobles at the same time, Luoning was a little confused. Only when Duque secretly kicked him did Luoning come to his senses. "Your Majesty Proudmoore, Your Majesty Rin, Commander Lothar, greetings." "Haha. Disciple. It's okay, I believe in your judgment." Lothar's loud voice was the first to congratulate him. Boing. For some reason, Duque always felt that Lang's gaze seemed to be telling him, "Duque, you brought this upon yourself? Did I do something wrong? Duque, you've started to accept disciples?" Dailin's eyes were playful. Can't I? At least I can be respectfully addressed as the Great Mage," Duque replied with his hands on his waist. No, I very much recognize your strength. Since you've already accepted a disciple, why don't you also accept a genius in frost magic?" "Who?" As soon as he asked, Duque felt a little regretful. He already knew the answer. "Jaina, come here for a while." Dailin called out to his daughter. Duque clenched his teeth, looking as if he had a toothache. The next moment, Duque saw a golden-haired lowly in a blue dress with white edges walking over quickly. Chapter 643. Jaina Proudmoore. She was the famous girl who sold her father. Now she was still a lowly who had not yet expired. When Duque saw Jaina again, he was shocked. The 13-year-old Jaina was already beautiful beyond the mortal world. After not seeing her for more than a year, the girl's puberty was obvious. She had inherited her mother's beauty. The influence of puberty had affected her, and the curve of her butt had become beautiful. Her chest, which used to be exquisite, had now become seductive. The unripe fruit had also begun to grow into a ripe peach. "Congratulations, Master Duque." Seeing Jaina give him a well-behaved lady's bow, Duke's mind was in a trance. His eyes were seeing things and his ears were hearing things. Jaina tilted her head and said to Duque, "Brother, although I don't mind, according to the law, if you push me down, you will be sentenced to at least 3 years in prison, and the highest is life." In the spiritual world, Duque's nose started to bleed and he replied in a domineering manner, 3 years of hard work. Life is not a loss." The little lowly Jaina's face suddenly turned pale. "All right." The scene returned to reality. Duke looked at Jaina with a dignified and calm gaze. She did not have many complicated thoughts, and she had the purity of Princess Kalia, as well as a pair of eyes that Kalia did not have. Yes. The biggest difference was in those sapphire eyes. If Kalia was a canary in a cage that King Tyrrhena's had carefully nurtured, she would not be able to escape. In that case, Jaina was a polar ice phoenix who was ready to set her dreams free at any time. Noble, beautiful, but with a faint sense of danger. A very magical sense of excitement was stimulating Duque's senses. And Dailin's next words made Duque feel a strange excitement in his heart reach its peak. "Duque, there is a big gap between our ages, and after going through life and death together, I have long regarded you as my little brother. My daughter is not like me, she cannot be the daughter of the sea. But I don't want to waste her unparalleled magic talent, so I want to entrust her to you. Duque tried to suppress the strange feeling in his heart. I remember that Her Highness Jaina worships His Excellency the most. But Lord Antonides is busy. I've asked him a few times but he always brushed me off. Dalen shrugged. I'm busy too. Karazhan will be attacked by demons soon. Even if I do, I still have to rebuild Stormwind, Duque said shamelessly. Suddenly Antonides came over. Are you trying to say that you have less energy than an old man like me? You bastard, did you guys discuss this beforehand? Duque seemed to want to refuse. I'm sorry. Dalen, Gianna is too beautiful. What if I can't control myself? Before Duque could finish, Dai Lin had already put his arm around Duque's shoulder. It's all right. Just remember to pay for your ticket after boarding the ship. I'm not picky when it comes to betrothal gifts. Just give me a deep water port as a betrothal gift. Father. Jaina was so embarrassed that she stomped her feet anxiously. Although she'd heard that her father wanted to betroth her to Duque, it was still embarrassing for a noble princess to say it in public. Dear, I'm just saying. Dai Lin comforted his daughter casually. Duque couldn't stay calm anymore. Damn you. Are you trying to test my moral integrity? Aren't you afraid that I won't pay for my ticket after boarding the ship? No. First, I believe that you're not that kind of person. Second, if you are, I'll declare war on Stormwind. Even if all the men in the country die, I'll kill you. When Dai Lin said this, Duque's face turned green. Bolsh *. He might even become the son-in-law of the Proudmoore family. If he taught her well, there would be no benefit at all. Only a ghost would do that. Please forgive me for firmly rejecting you, Duque said firmly. Don't be in such a hurry to reject me. At this time Lang and Andoin came up. Andoin put his hand on Duque's shoulder and showed him a contract made of craft paper. It was a 10-year economic and trade contract between Stormwind and the Kingdom of Kurtiras. From trade to supplies to arms supply to maritime cooperation. It was almost a comprehensive cooperation between the two countries. Duque roughly looked at it. Stormwind could earn at least 2 million gold coins every year, and that was only for the first year. In other words, the contract was estimated to be worth more than 20 million gold coins. Obviously, this was a cooperation that Stormwind couldn't refuse. Lang, you're selling me off for a mere 20 million? Duque was devastated. You can't put it that way. Princess Jaina will return to Cultivation after studying under you until she's 20, or if she reaches the Radiant Moon rank early, or if you marry another noble, Leon said, a little embarrassed. Duque vomited 3 liters of blood. The other party wasn't trying to force it onto them unreasonably. Teaching someone's daughter would earn him 20 million gold coins in net profit. Although it would be split for 10 years, Duque knew very well that the southern continent's Iron Furnace Fort and Stormwind City would have nothing to do with the third battle of the Dark Portal. As long as they survived the wave of Nizol, Stormwind would welcome a 10-year development period. Moreover, becoming enemies with Kurtiras would not benefit Stormwind at all. Before the underground train tunnel was opened to the Iron Furnace Fort, Stormwind's only way to communicate with the outside world was through the sea. There was no need to go north through the burning steppes. The Black Iron Dwarves who opposed the Bronzebeard Dwarves were at the bottom of the Black Rock Mountain. Going there for trade would be suicide. Duque looked at Lang and Andoin, then at Dalen and Antonides. These old foxes all had an invisible devil's tail on their buttocks, wagging it as they snickered. Lang, Andoin, is there really no room for discussion? Duque asked. The 2 bastards shook their heads like a rattle drum. Duque's bird of despair. Father, didn't we agree that it's only an apprenticeship? Jaina asked. It's an apprenticeship. Dalen replied. It's just a precaution, so I said it first. Jaina was also a bird of despair. Just like that, the bitter Jaina walked in front of Duque. Jaina Proudmoore requests Master Duke Marcus to accept me as a disciple and guide me on the path of arcane magic. All right, Duque said helplessly. From today onwards you are my disciple, Duque. Come greet Luoning. He entered the sect earlier than you, so he's your big brother. Greetings, senior brother Ronan. Greetings, junior sister Jaina. Ronan was older, so Jaina's greeting was not out of place. At this time Dalen suddenly said, Duque, I know my daughter is a little smart and has all kinds of ideas. I'm afraid you won't be able to control her. How about this, I'll give you my sword. I, Dahlin, hereby swear in the name of Proudmoore that I will give Duke Marcus the right to discipline my daughter Jaina. If Jaina does anything that goes against the rules of humanity, Master Duque can use this sword to punish Jaina. I, Dahlin, will not object. Any duke who marries a princess becomes a prince in the truest sense of the word. If something were to happen to the official heir, it would be a loss of royal authority. This kind of thing happened too many times since ancient times. Before the war, Dahlin didn't really mind Jaina and Prince Arthas of Lordaeron getting closer. Being the queen of Lordaeron didn't seem to be a bad thing. The battle at the Dark Portal changed everything. Lordaeron's reputation was tarnished. Tarina's putting Nesario in an important position could still be justified. But Tarina's and the entire upper class of Lordaeron's attempt to annex Alterac was real. Without this, there would be no such thing as making Presto the king. Tarina's was willing to use Neltharion. Who knew if he would kill then Reed after Arthas married Jaina? If that was the case, Lordaeron could legitimately annex Cul Tiras. So Dahlin completely changed his mind. He didn't even want to put Jaina in the Dalajan, which was so close to Lordaeron. If Arthas really wanted to see Jaina, he could just take a boat across Lordaeron Mill Lake. But if he put Jaina in Karazhan, which was in the hinterland of Stormwind, that would be a different story. Dahlin didn't believe that Tarina's would let Arthas cross more than 2,000 kilometers, or use something as dangerous as a portal to meet Jaina. If he really did come, wouldn't there be Duque to block the way? Now that Duque had accepted Jaina as his disciple, it was like the fish had taken the bait. Dahlin knew his daughter's charm very well. She was only 12 years old, but she had already charmed all the male Dalajan mages. Now she was even more beautiful. From today onwards she was going to live under the same roof as Duque for 7 years. Dahlin didn't believe that nothing would happen. Dahlin was also an experienced playboy when he was young. He could tell at a glance that Aurelia and Sasha, who were always by Duque's side, had already fallen for him. It wasn't just the Windrunner sisters. The little girl from the Bear family was also deeply in love even though she was still a virgin. Dahlin was very smart, but he would never know that Duque was a transmigrator. He was extremely wary of his precious daughter. Fire, theft and betrayal. Duque was really afraid. He was afraid that he would be cursed to death if he wasn't careful. Dahlin had his own wishful thinking. Duque also had his own black-bellied plan. In just 2 minutes, a set of the real black-bellied lowly training plan had been born in Duque's mind. However, Duque, who was possessed by the best actor, didn't let anyone notice anything amiss. Everyone. While we're celebrating Duque's promotion to a Radiant Moon Archmage, I'd like to announce a piece of good news. My daughter, Jaina, is going to be Duque's disciple. She's going to learn the secrets of magic from Duque. Dahlin struck while the iron was hot and announced it publicly. Chapter 645. Wow! Under the cheers of the 3 dwarf kings, the leaders of the alliance and even the surrounding nobles let out a second wave of exclamations. Who was Antonidas? He was one of the 2 Breaking Dawn great wizards in the current known kingdom. After Kuel Salus left the alliance, he became the leader of the alliance's occult domain. The things that Duque had given to his 2 disciples actually made even Antonidas jealous. How precious were they? After hearing Antonidas's evaluation, even Jaina, who was used to seeing big things, was so shocked that her mouth opened in an O shape. She almost spat out her tongue. She was a country bumpkin who had never seen an exquisite equipment before. At first, Dahlin was afraid that Duque would be too stingy. After all, his daughter had been forced onto him, and Duque was not too willing to accept it. Dahlin really wanted to see if Duque valued his daughter from the gifts that her master had given her. Now that he knew that Duque had given him something priceless, Dahlin started to complain about Antonidas. Oh, Antonidas, you're not being kind. That's a gift from Duque to me, and you still have the cheek to ask for it? Old Antonidas blushed and then said bitterly and aggrievedly, please, it's not just me. Even those arrogant elven wizards know even if Anastrain was here he would want it too. Because those 2 are Wings of Death's treasures. Oh my god. And they're even family heirlooms. As the authoritative pharaoh finished speaking, the noise in the banquet hall suddenly rose by more than 1 level. It was like a raging wave. The exclamations of the leaders of the alliance and the nobles even alerted the guards outside the door. A few paladins rushed into the banquet hall with the royal guards, and only retreated awkwardly when they saw that nothing was wrong. Wings of Death, Nisario's treasures? Dooku was really willing to part with it. When Jaina first received the pair of gloves, she instinctively felt that this pair of magic gloves was extraordinary. Jaina fell in love with the dark red background and mysterious purple-blue patterns at first glance. The moment she put it on, she felt that her magic circuits had at least doubled. Not only the capacity but even the flow of mana had been greatly increased. Jaina could clearly feel that this was only a very, very small portion of the glove's power. Furthermore, there was a faint dragon's breath lingering around her fingers. This was not the corrosive dragon breath of the Wings of Death. This was the frost dragon breath that had been carefully purified and modified by some almighty being. For Jaina, who was only an earth mage, it was an unimaginable treasure. If that was the case, it wouldn't be considered a treasure of the Wings of Death. What shocked Jaina the most were the words, "family heirloom." That's right. This pair of gloves was precious because it was a family heirloom. In other words, it did not limit the magic level of the user. Even the lowest level magic apprentice could wear it. Mages with a family heirloom would cultivate faster, and there was no need to worry about collecting the best magic equipment in the process of cultivation. This was because the attributes of the family heirloom would automatically unlock the seal layer by layer as the owner's magic level improved. Moreover, because the level of the heirloom itself was very high, there was no need to consider eliminating it before the owner reached the level that the equipment should have. Not to mention it was an epic equipment that even Antonidas was jealous of. Originally, Jaina was dissatisfied with her father's unreasonable giving of a sword to Duque, allowing Duque to control her life and death after she violated the ban. However, in the face of Duque's precious super gift, Jaina's young heart fell a little. So Brother Duque, oh, Teacher Duque still likes me very much. That sword is more of a formality. I won't violate the ban, so teacher won't use that sword to punish me. Jaina's pretty face was red from excitement. She raised her sharp chin and looked up at Duque's gentle and kind face. Teacher, what's the name of this pair of gloves? Duque said kindly, this pair of gloves has a very nice name. It's called Misty Gloves. Blooming like fireworks and flowing like water? So nice. Thank you, teacher. I really like this pair of gloves. In order to express her excitement, Jaina used a total of 3 tens to describe her excitement. A certain someone laughed sinisterly in his heart. That's right. Misty, if you dare to mess around in the future, I'll light you up like a cigarette. On the other side, Ronan was so excited that he was about to cry. In this life, Ronan did not have the merit of being the main force that saved the Red Dragon Queen. Even though he did not kill any of his teammates this time, he was still not well received in the Dalajan. His days were miserable. Originally, Ronan had become Duque's disciple under Krasa's suggestion, but he never thought that Duque would really take him in. He was already overjoyed that Duque had taken him in. Who would have thought that Duque would be so rich as to take out 2 rare treasures from the Wings of Death as gifts? Looking at the accessory that looked like half a small stone slab in his hands, Ronan was speechless for a long time. Even a magician's apprentice could feel the unparalleled power contained within it, as well as the mysterious mana amplification. This was not just a simple mana amplification. Ronan could feel that when he started casting spells, the accessory would give him more than just a single level of amplification. It might even give him 2 or 3 levels of amplification. This was a peerless treasure that any magician could only dream of. Teacher Duque actually gave such an amazing item away just like that. Just how much does teacher think of me? Tears were already welling up in Ronan's eyes. Teacher, thank you. Unable to express his excitement with words, Ronan ran in front of Duque and kowtowed heavily. In this era, only the lowliest citizens would have to kowtow like this when they saw their leader. Even if Duque was a teacher, it was still a bit exaggerated. But everyone could understand. Behind King Dalen's old lover and personal bodyguard, Gina Goldsword, did not hide her envy. She whispered into Dalen's ear, I'm so jealous of Gina. If someone gave me this before I met you, I would sleep with them for the rest of my life, not to mention kowtowing. Dalen knew that his old lover was joking, but he was still deeply touched. Duque helped Ronan up. Get up. This accessory of yours is called Unruly Will. Just like Gina's, it's a rare treasure. Duque lied with a straight face. Chapter 646. An accessory that could temporarily increase intelligence. Every time a damaging spell was cast for 10 seconds and could stack up to 10 times. Even if it seemed to be the same level as the glove next door, could its actual combat effect be the same? In the game, players would pray every week to open 3 of these items at once, and it was best to wear 2 at the same time. Would it be an ordinary item? Not to mention Ronan and Jaina. Even Antonidas had never seen unruly wool before. Only those who had used it knew that this was a divine item that mages of the same level could only dream of. Especially for a mage like Ronan who had a high explosive hairstyle, it was like adding wings to a tiger. Anyone who touched this thing would be killed. Think about it, the guy opposite him had been holding his breath until his face was red, and he had held his breath to fire a .38 caliber pistol bullet. Who would have thought that the next moment it would be a .5 caliber sniper rifle bullet and the next moment it would be a howitzer. Every time a spell was cast, the damage could be stacked and the damage could be stacked 10 times in one go. Behind Duque's seemingly fair appearance, he was a classic case of favoritism. It wasn't just any ordinary favoritism but a direct one. The kind of favoritism that could tip the scales. Everyone only knew that they were all from Nisario, but who knew that there were subdivided production versions of the same boss, ordinary version and elite version? Yes. Jaina's smoke glove was the production version, and Ronan's was the elite version. The unruly wool of the same level, and Duque had another one on his waist. Duque didn't know why there were 2 identical unruly wool on Deathwing. After he tried to wear both at the same time and failed, he simply did it as a favor. Anyway, it was definitely not a loss to give it to Ronan. Cough cough. Seeing Ronan kneel to him so sincerely, even the thick-skinned Duque felt a little hot. Thinking about it, Duque felt a little relieved. Not to mention anything else, even if he was biased, so what? Not every talented mage could have an heirloom, modified from Deathwing's exquisite equipment. One had to know that the modifier was the Red Dragon Queen, life-giver Alexstrasza. And this was just something that a certain queen casually did. Although that fellow kept saying that there would be a heavy reward, Duque didn't even see what the hell the so-called heavy reward was until he left the Dragon Sleep Temple. Duque wasn't in a hurry. As long as his relationship with Alexstrasza and the Crimson Dragon Legion was solid enough, it would be fine. At this moment, everyone present applauded. Magni said carelessly, "All right. Even I, the king, am envious. The 2 of you are so lucky to have such a generous teacher." Krasis smiled at Ronan. "Congratulations, Ronan." "Yes, thank you." Ronan started crying. Dai-Lin was both happy and a little jealous. Although he had pushed Jaina away for the stability and continuity of the kingdom, she was still his daughter. Seeing how well Duque treated her, Dai-Lin felt a little sad. "Remember to listen to Teacher Duque." "Yes, father," Jaina replied softly. She then lowered her head and stared blankly at the magnificent and powerful pair of gloves. The banquet ended with a round of well wishes. From today onwards, Ronan and Jaina would follow Duque. Ronan had nothing to worry about, so he directly followed Duque to the state guest house in Stormwind. Jaina was a little more troublesome. She still had to move things from Dalajan to Karazhan, and she would meet up with Duque later. It was late at night. When Duque returned to his room, he was surprised to find that Elugia was helping him prepare the bed. This kind of thing can be left to the maids." Duque was a little embarrassed. "I don't feel safe leaving it to the maids of Lordaeron. This used to be done by Vanessa. She's not here and I have nothing to do anyway, so I might as well do it." Elugia, who hadn't even changed out of her evening gown, rushed over and carefully made the bed. Duque felt a strange sense of warmth in his heart. "That's enough. The bed will be messy again in a while." Duque was speaking the truth. As a college pervert, as an evil person who didn't make his bed, he really didn't understand the meaning of making his bed. So for a long time his bed was a dog's kennel. "If the bed is clean and tidy, Aurelia and Miss Sasha will be happy," Elugia said calmly. What a good girl. If he hadn't met Aurelia before, Duque might have fallen in love with Elugia first. It was rare that Elugia came from a prestigious family, but she didn't put on airs at all. The inexplicable feeling in Duque's heart became more and more fervent. His arms crossed over the beautiful girl's shoulders and gently hugged Elugia from behind. Duque could feel the girl's body temperature rising rapidly in his arms. Duque opened his palm, revealing a strange ornament that looked like a ring. There was a cold and gentle electric light in the blue and white outer ring. This is... Right next to Elusia's ear, Duque's manly hot breath made the young lady of the bear family go limp. This is called... capacitor. I got it when I joined forces with Lothar to kill a powerful demon in Karazhan. Although it's not a high-grade item, I think it suits you very well. Really? Can I? Elusia seemed to be in slight disbelief. Even her outstretched hands were trembling slightly. After taking the ornament from Duque's palm, she stared at it for a long time. Then she clenched it tightly with both hands and placed it closest to her heart. Duque didn't understand why Elusia was so excited. I know very well that my talent in magic isn't very good. Mother said that I can still hope to become a morning star mage in this lifetime, but it's hard to hope for anything higher. I may not be of much help in the field of magic in the future, so I only pray that I can do what I can. Hearing this, Dooku fell silent. That's right. Even in the original history, Elusia was only a third-rate boss in Scholomance. Compared to Ronan and Jaina, her talent was like the difference between a firefly and a star. If Duke Berev hadn't sold food to help the refugees of Stormwind, he wouldn't have met, gotten to know Elusia. It had been almost 3 years since he transmigrated to Azeroth. His growth had long left many of his contemporaries far behind, but Duque was very clear that he wasn't someone who didn't care about old friendships. At this moment Elusia suddenly spoke. Duque, if you think it's necessary to marry Miss Jaina, then just marry her. I'm a girl from a declining family. As long as I can have a small corner in your heart, I'll be satisfied. Duque was shocked. Chapter 647. He understood what was going on with Elusia's sadness. Elusia, who was born in the declining Bera family, immediately felt an instinctive sense of inferiority when she saw King Daelin of Kratira's cell Jaina. He had thought that she was a gentlewoman like Sasha, but Duque now realized that Elusia, who was born in a noble family, was much more fragile than the women of the Windrunner family. The women of the Windrunner family were always full of confidence no matter what. Don't be fooled by Sasha's gentle appearance, but she was decisive on the battlefield. If Duke really died or ran off to become a ghoul, Sasha would definitely be the type of person who would kill the ghoul Duke even if she had to hold back her tears. Then she would cry after the battle was over. Elusia obviously needed comfort. Duque hugged Elusia. I swear I will never marry Jaina. Elusia shuddered. She could hardly believe what she had just heard. She really did not understand why Duque would not want the young and beautiful Jaina, who was noble and could be of help in politics. But in the next moment, Elusia's imagination filled in the blanks. Thank you, Duque. Even if it's a lie, I'm willing to die. She turned around and buried her head in Duque's chest. Duque had no one to argue with. From the first day he crossed over to Azeroth, Duque remembered one truth. The princesses of Azeroth were all frauds. From the female wild boar named Princess in the Elven Forest, to the bear princess Yisong who was locked in a cage on Blood Island, to the Earth Princess Mizrael who cheated the orcs, to the Maraudon Princess in the Kalimdor continent whose measurements were 40, 80 and 40, and finally to the seemingly normal Princess Jaina who sold her father, there were countless examples of frauds. In any case, Elusia absolutely could not understand Duque's fear of princesses as if they were ghosts. Fortunately, this didn't hinder her from experiencing Duque's determination. Duque could feel that the heart of the beauty in his arms was completely intoxicated. If he wanted to push her down, she probably would not refuse. But the beast Duque's conscience was playing tricks on him. Even though Duque wasn't a good person and he had fantasized about making a killing in 3 years and never losing money, when it came down to it, girls under the age of 18 were beyond his hunting range. Didn't you see that before you transmigrated, it was written that women must not be younger than 20 years old to get married? All right. Even if he transmigrated, he couldn't go against the country's policies. What if he had the chance to transmigrate back and write his story into a novel but was banned? The author doesn't even have a place to cry. At this moment, Duque was an upright and reliable husband. At this moment, Duque was a man of integrity that everyone loved. Surprisingly, Duque really held back. He gently patted Elusia's back, comforting the sensitive girl. Leaning against Duque's chest, Elugia could clearly feel Duque's excitement and calmness again. She slowly raised her head and stared into Duque's deep black eyes. Her face was full of shyness. Duque, actually I can. Duque shook his head gently, then blew into Elugia's ear. I promise you, when you turn 18 I will give you a real coming-of-age ceremony. This time Elugia's pretty face was really red. She slowly closed her eyes. I want a promise from you, not just a verbal promise. How could Duque not understand? He directly pressed his lips against hers. A French kiss was enough to make this little girl infatuated. Duque teased. It's obviously a verbal promise. Elugia was so embarrassed that she ran away as fast as she could. Watching the beauty's back disappear from his sight, Duque turned his head and immediately face-palmed. Damn, do you have to be so elusive? What appeared in his field of vision were two pairs of long white legs unique to the High Elves. The Windrunner sisters were actually sitting on the beam of the room. When did you come in? Aurelia pretended to use her right index finger to point at her sharp chin. She looked like she was thinking, then turned her head to ask her third sister. Yes. When did we come in? Sasha smiled like a flower, since little Elugia folded the quilt. Duque spurted out. What the hell, didn't that mean that they were here from the beginning? Duque complained. Don't scare me. Why did you hide on the beam with your aura covered? We didn't hide. We were up there the whole time. Who told you to not look at us and jump on little Elugia the moment you entered the room? Aurelia was happy to see Duque embarrassed. Sister said that she wanted to see if you were infatuated with little Jaina. Sasha unceremoniously sold her sister out. Sister, don't think that you can sell me out just because you're my sister. Aurelia pretended to wave her little fist. Help, Duque, sister wants to deal with me. With that, Sasha screamed and jumped down. A gust of wind carried her slender body and Sasha slowly floated down. Even with Duque's small body, he could easily princess carry Sasha and protect her. Looking at Sasha's pair of smooth calves swinging on the right side of his field of vision, Duque laughed. Don't be jealous. How can you guys miss out on a share of Nesario's good stuff? Duque waved his hand and took out a pair of boots that were not very bright from his dimensional bag. But Duque knew that Sasha would like them. As a ranger who needed to hide, bright colors were not practical. This pair of boots with a brown base was not as good as the green ones, but they were quite good. This is the boots of dreams. They're definitely much better than your superior ones. Sasha did not go down. She just picked up the boots in Duque's arms and put them on. This is great. I feel much lighter. Where's mine? Chapter 648. The whole night was filled with fairies fighting. Oh, fighting fairies. The sun rose and the cold morning wind blew away the dark clouds. The rising sun reluctantly rose over the Alterac Mountains, and the warm sunlight shone into the room, waking Duque up. Aurelia was still sleeping soundly on the right, and there was a satisfied smile on her lips. No matter how many times Duque looked at her, he would always be fascinated by her alluring mix of nobility and wildness. Beside him, Sasha's long legs clamped onto Duque's thighs. Duque smiled and moved his body a few times to free himself from the elastic thighs. Duque's getting up did not wake the two sisters up. After losing Duque as a human pillow, Sasha unconsciously moved to the right and hugged her sister. Aurelia seemed to be subconsciously used to her sister's actions. After a whimper, she hugged her sister with one hand. After Duque washed up, he went out and saw Lucia, Gavin Rad, and the captain of his knights, Cassa, waiting outside. Make an appointment for me with His Majesty Rin, Commander Lothar, and Archbishop Fail. 2 hours later, everyone was present. Do you really not need more people to clean up Karazhan? Lang asked with concern. Duque shook his head. No need. Karazhan is too narrow and there are too many people. After all, it's my own territory. I know what I'm doing. Anduin's loud voice sounded. Duque is right. That damned place. It's useless to have too many people there. Besides, these elites can protect themselves anywhere in the world, let alone Karazhan. Looking around, Duque's Karazhan raid team was gorgeous. The warrior and main tank was Muradin Bronzebeard, who had run over after hearing the news. The vanguard was Gavin Rad and Tyrion Fordring, 2 first-generation paladins. The thief was Edwin Van Cleef. The long-range team was the 3 Windrunner sisters, plus the two mages, Duque and Ronin. The healer was Stormwind City's Holy Light Bishop Benedict. Duque took a look and laughed so hard that his stomach was about to burst. These were elites? Damn, he was clearly pulling a bunch of heroes and leader bosses to fight another bunch of bosses. Perhaps only Duque would be able to do something so deranged. If these guys were in their heyday in the future, Duque would definitely not need the help of the four great dragon kings. He would just lead them to torture Nesario to death. At this moment they still had serious expressions on their faces. Muradin and the two paladins were repeatedly checking their hammers and shields. Edwin carefully smeared poison on his dagger. This was the first time Duque had summoned him after recovering all of Stormwind. For a while, Edwin almost thought that he'd lost Duque's attention and was a bit depressed. Now that Duque had summoned him to clean up Karazhan, of course Edwin was excited. The three Windrunner sisters all had different reactions. If it was the Earth Wizard Duque from before, it would definitely be difficult. But now, Duque was really used to train his troops. A demon that Alexstrasza had specifically reminded him of was definitely not some random person. But who could it be? Duque repeatedly compared the demons in his memory with names, his mind in a mess. In reality, the demons in Azeroth were not called demons. To be precise, they were a race called Eridar. This highly intelligent humanoid race did not come from the world of Azeroth or Draenor. They came from an ancient and faraway world called Argus. When Sargeras was fighting against the Dreadlord, he was affected by the mind manipulation spell. After that, he began to doubt his own divine life. He persuaded Kil'jaeden and Archimonde, one of the three heads of Eridar, and Eridar split up. The more righteous prophet Willan left with his people and ran to Draenor to seek refuge. Those Eridar people later became the Draenei. As for the remaining Eridar people who followed the two Burning Legion commanders, they began to be called Man'ari, which were the demons in the eyes of the people of Azeroth. Chapter 649. By the way, Duque, your army isn't weak at all. Why can't you take down the second level? Aurelia asked head butler Khadgar, whom Duque had arranged to stay in Karazhan, as they passed through the ballroom on the second level of Karazhan. This was not Aurelia's fault. The other members of the team had the same question as well. There were more than 100 people in the team, and it felt like any one of them could easily take down a team of royal knights. There was also Khadgar, the ghost butler with unknown strength. There was also a mysterious golem called Curator. Strong no matter how one looked at it. Khadgar's face suddenly showed a sad expression. Those demons. Those damn demons. We can't fight them at all. Curator is too big, we can't go in. This has nothing to do with combat power, it's just, sob sob sob. They bullied me. After saying this, Khadgar actually ran away in tears. The accompanying Einherjars also had strange expressions on their faces. They all stayed on the second level and refused to move. Master, we can't fight against those demons, but with Lady Windrunner and the other ladies here, there shouldn't be a problem, right? What's the problem? Sasha asked curiously. It had been a long time since he had returned and Duque's memories were a little fuzzy. But when he went up the stairs and heard a flirtatious and seductive female voice coming from the corridor ahead, the dust-covered memories reopened. Damn it. No wonder that brat Khadgar lost so badly. Why isn't that Khadgar coming? Things just got interesting the last time. Sigh. It's always over so quickly. A ghost mage. Well, the process itself is quite interesting. Looking at the flirtatious female attendants in revealing clothes not far from the guest hall, Duque's side thought of Khadgar's escape and a few men laughed shamelessly. Duque was speechless. He face-bombed, not wanting to say anything. Wow. Gavin Rad whistled. I like this style, it's a pity. That's right. What a pity. The female attendants at the front were extremely attractive. They had round faces, perky buttocks and long white legs. They had everything that should be there. They were definitely in line with the visual sense of a normal man. Coquettish sluts could attract men's attention no matter where they were. They weren't succubi. At this moment, the three Windrunner sisters surrounded Duque. Aurelia rolled her eyes. Fortunately, I've been by your side for the past year. Otherwise, I would have doubted your taste. This time, Sasha did not compromise. Humph. If you bring such a fellow into the house, my sister and I will leave at once. Duque surrendered. Please, this is Karazhan, the connecting point of countless voids. It wasn't strange for any kind of person to come out. Leave this kind of woman for Gavin Rad. Gavin Rad immediately protested. Hey. I'm a first-generation holy knight. As someone with an incomparably noble character and sentiments, only a woman who also emits holy light can move my heart. Oh, she must have a good figure. I don't want a beautiful woman who doesn't conform to the golden ratio. Hee. Duque shamelessly smiled mysteriously. Aurelia raised the hunting bow in her hand and seemed to be pointing at something. Then Duque, you don't mind if I get rid of these pretty vases, right? Why would I have any objections? Succubi were extremely lethal to every male. Men would always find it hard to resist charm-type skills. It seemed like Khadgar's moral integrity was lost here and could not be retrieved. But Duke didn't understand. Why didn't Khadgar's soul scatter and scatter? What the three Windstalker sisters practiced was the lying corpse archery. After a wave of xiao sounds, Gavin Rad watched with regret as those balls, butts and legs all turned into raging flames, disappearing from his field of view. Everyone continued down the corridor. After clearing out the phantom guardians in 2 rooms, a dignified female voice suddenly sounded. Intruders, your actions are unforgivable. Impure thoughts will lead to blasphemous actions. You must be purified. Come, let me, as the Saintess of Chastity, be your opponent. Muradin and Edwin, who were leading the charge, were stunned. The next second, the bastard dwarf pointed to the front shamelessly. There, Gavin Rad, your favorite woman who emits holy light, is here. Do you want to talk to her? Just one look and Gavin Rad felt unwell. Damn. What the hell was that? It was true that she emitted holy light. The golden ratio was true. It was also true that she was a woman, and the Saintess of Chastity. But why the hell were you a 10-meter-tall stone giant? What happened to the fun and flirting? Gavin Rad, who had always thought of himself as elegant, was petrified. A gust of wind blew and everyone seemed to see Gavin Rad's soul dissipate with the wind. The female giant was very tall and she was in a huge hall at the end of the corridor. The thick pillars in the middle of the hall seemed to have some mysterious power that prevented the female giant from walking out. What do we do? Everyone looked at Duque. Duque shrugged. There's nothing we can do. The demon army is about to attack and I have to eliminate all the unstable factors in Karazhan. Although it's a bit unfair to Gavin Rad's girlfriend, I can only ask her to destroy it. Hey, who's my girlfriend? Don't think you can say whatever you want just because you're my boss. You have a princess as your fiancé and I'm still single. Gavin Rad's threatening roar was ignored. Duque commanded, everyone spread out. Since the opponent is holy, she might have AoE skills like devotion that can penetrate the ground with holy light. The Saintess of Chastity. This was a dummy boss that could be defeated with one's eyes closed. Duque didn't feel anything for this female boss who was surrounded by a group of succubi for some reason. With a command, everyone rushed forward, sharpening their weapons to defeat the boss. Another accident happened. Are you an emissary of the holy light? Without any reaction to Muradin's shield strike on her calf, the Holy Maiden of Chastity knelt on one knee and stared at Gavin Rad with shining golden eyes. Huh. Gavin Rad's face was full of confusion. Tyrion Fordring raised his long 2-handed hammer. Yes. He and I are both first-generation paladins who have inherited the holy light, the Azeroth. The Holy Maiden of Chastity nodded. I'm so happy to meet companions who believe in the same holy power in different worlds. Seems that you are not my enemy. My name is Jenna Christian. What's your name? Gavin Rad's mind was in a mess and he answered almost subconsciously, Gavin Rad bad luck. Looking at the harmonious exchange of questions and answers, Muradin turned his head. Gavin Rad, how dare you say she's not your girlfriend? Chapter 650. Dwarves were all straightforward people. Unless it involved secrets, they would usually say whatever they thought. Otherwise, why would the gun called dwarf fishing rod be so famous? Muradin's big mouth pushed Gavin Rad directly onto the fire. Apart from Theon, after a brief moment of confusion, almost everyone held in their laughter until they suffered internal injuries. Gavin Rad was also a big mouth. He had just finished talking about his criteria for choosing a girlfriend, And then a boss that fit his criteria jumped out. He really deserved it. Gavin Rad almost had the urge to kill him. But the bastard Duque continued to push the poor paladin into the fire with a straight face. In order to face the coming demon army, we must unite all holy forces. Gavin Thean, I'll leave the task of communicating with her to you. Yes. Thean straightened his back. Yes. Gavin Rad looked like he was going to a funeral. The female giant Jenna did not seem to notice Duque's shenanigans. Instead, she knelt down excitedly and asked the two paladins all sorts of questions. Duque casually said, I wish you all happiness. Then Duque patted his butt and left. This was a small step for Gavin Rad to sacrifice himself, but it was also a big step for the great cause of the Holy Light. May the Holy Light fool you. If in the future books like Interracial Love Under the Banner of the Way of the Holy Light, or The Unspeakable Story of the First Paladin and the Female Giant of Holy Light, appeared in Azeroth, or even tricked the rookie paladins later on, Duque said that it had absolutely nothing to do with him. After leaving the hall, the bastards finally could not hold it in and burst into laughter. Haha. I'm dying of laughter. I want to ask, if Gavin Rad and that Jenna had a child, how tall would his child be? Muradin was the first to fire. Ronan replied stupidly, generally speaking, it seems difficult to have children of different races. But there are exceptions. For example, Miss Jessie Farrell in the Stormwind Fleet has dwarven blood. And elves and humans can also give birth to half-elves. Humans and female giants might also be possible. Luo Ning was truly stupid, but in the ears of others, it sounded like Luo Ning was seriously insulting Gavin Rad. For some reason, the three Windrunner sisters blushed when they heard the word half-elf. Of course, except for Benedict, the Bishop of Holy Light, the focus of their discussion naturally fell on the immoral topic of how humans could have children with stone giants. Without two holy knights, the vanguard of the team was much weaker. But it was not important. After dealing with the succubus disguised as a maid, Karthika and his heroic army returned to the battlefield. Khadgar led more than 100 translucent Einherjars and fought against the ghostly guests who were wandering around the ballroom and on the way to the opera house. Duque breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, he was still a bit unsure about clearing out Karazhan. This was Azeroth in real life. It wasn't a game that simply ranked the strong and the weak. The people around him had all stepped into the realm of heroes. It could be said that apart from Luo Ning, who was still a sky mage, none of them were weak. On the other hand, their bodies could not be as strong and durable as in the game. Perhaps in the game, every powerful leader could withstand the attacks of hundreds of top players. Unfortunately, this was reality. After seeing Anduin and Orgrim injure each other so easily, Duque understood. Perhaps they had extraordinary reflexes and strength and could use mysterious powers that transcended the mortal world, but deep down they were still weak mortals. The priests in this world did not have any resurrection spells. The only one who could resurrect a person was Duque. Sighing, Duque and the others had arrived at the opera house in Karazhan. Wow. So beautiful. After this place is cleaned up, can we enjoy the opera here? Sasha shook Duque's arm excitedly. Duque laughed. Of course. After dealing with the attack of the demons, you sisters can decorate the place however you want. Along the way, the ghost audience and ghost servants had all been killed by the Einherjars. Unlike monsters in the real world, ghosts usually wouldn't leave any traces after they disappeared. What appeared in front of the adventurer team was a slightly dilapidated opera house. The scale of the opera house was so large that it was comparable to the Sydney Opera House before Duque traveled to this world. Yes, it was a smaller version. The middle of the horseshoe-shaped hall was for ordinary people to sit in. The three sides of the hall were VIP seats that were 3 levels high. Looking at the expensive satin decorations and the beautiful tables, chairs and tableware, it was not hard to imagine the grand occasion when King Lang and Anduin brought a large group of nobles from Stormwind to watch the opera. This was an era where entertainment was scarce. Other than the low-level clowns and bards who would perform in the market, the biggest entertainment for the nobles was the opera. It was true that the Windrunner sisters were rangers, but where did Aurelia's elegance and beautiful harp skills come from? She had also gone through strict etiquette training and a long period of musical training. Suddenly, the melodious sound of the organ reverberated in everyone's ears. Following the direction of the music, Duque and the others found that Servanas had sat on the huge organ on the left side of the stage. Queen Sylvanus's slender fingers danced across the keys, producing beautiful notes. In a trance, everyone saw a lush green forest, smelled the fragrance of flowers mixed with the fragrance of the earth, and heard the chirping of birds echoing in the forest. Everyone was mesmerized by it. Before they knew it, the song had ended. It was not just Duque and the others. Even the Einherjars gave Sylvanus a warm applause. Sylvanus sighed. Duque, you have so many good things here. There are only 2 such national treasures in the whole of Cuel Salis. Duque shrugged. If you like it, you can come here every day. I won't be in your way. Queen Sylvanus rolled her eyes at Duque with a complicated expression. Humph. Duque was a little confused. He turned to Aurelia and asked, Did I piss her off? Aurelia covered her mouth and snickered. I won't tell you my sister's secret. Look, Duque, can I go on the stage? Windsor pointed excitedly at the huge stage that was covered by a red curtain, her hands waving. Chapter 651. That stage. It had been so easy to get here that Duque had almost forgotten about the stage. Coming back to his senses, Duque immediately stopped Xianxia. Wait, I sense a strong presence behind the curtains. Perhaps Duque's expression was too real, or perhaps Duque was too cool. The moment Duque finished speaking, Edwin Van Cleef's expression changed. The 3 Windrunner sisters' expressions changed as well. It would be their fault if they failed to find the enemy. My apologies, Grand Duke. Edwin immediately apologized. Duque waved his hand. It's not your fault. You are not the master of Karazhan. You cannot understand the spatial structure here. It's another world behind the curtains. Even with Duque's words, everyone stopped underestimating him. Just now, the curtains were less than 5 meters away from the audience. Because they were surrounded by Einherjars, everyone was more relaxed. Even Benedict, who was the core of the team and should be protected, was exposed in front of the stage. At this point in time, many powerful healing spells for holy knights had not been developed, and there were no holy knights who specialized in spiritual healing spells. The druids from the Night Elves had not joined the alliance yet. The priest was the main healer of the team. It was hard to imagine that if 2 arrows were shot from behind the curtains, the team would collapse. The only good thing was that this was Duque's home field. At least there was a way out. After a while, Gavin Rad and Tyrion arrived. She agreed. Duque asked. Yes, Lady Christine was thrown here by the spatial turbulence. Even she doesn't know the way back. If it's to fight against evil demons, she's willing to be the protector of Karazhan, Gavin Rad replied seriously. The atmosphere had been good. The Bronzebeard family's big mouth had easily stepped on a certain holy knight's tail. Hey, I thought she agreed to your proposal. Muradin, you bastard. I'll duel you when we get out. Gavin Rad was furious. Let's duel then, who's afraid of who? Muradin was also stubborn. Alright, after we get out, it's up to you how you want to fight, but for now, don't cause any more trouble. If you really want to duel, I'll be the one to decide the weapon. Duque suppressed the 2 clowns with a single sentence. At this time, Khadgar returned. We've cleared the ghost actors ahead, but we can't find the way. A strange spatial layer had sealed off the original path. And we found a strange spirit. A special ghost. Sasha's eyes lit up. No, it should be said that the eyes of the 3 Windrunner sisters were frighteningly bright. It was difficult for them to resist the temptation of new things. Following the passage on the right side of the opera house, Duque and the rest followed the only passage to the backstage of the stage. At the end of the passage, they saw a male ghost announcer in formal attire. Unlike the other spirits, his soul seemed to be in a completely different space from the adventurer team. No matter if they tried to touch or use elemental power to attack, they all ended up missing. However, everyone noticed that this strange spirit would ask every once in a while, "Are you new actors? Damn it, I've already informed Master that the previous scenes were all done badly. We need a new script, new opponents and new scenes." "We're here to kill all of you messy people," Muradin replied directly. There was no response. "The holy light guided us here. We need to clear out the evil here," Benedict said. "How much do you need to tip to open the door next to you?" Edwin tried to solve the problem in a thief's way. "Duque, don't expect us sisters to seduce you," Sasha said. "Duque, the spirits, At this time it was Sylvanas who stepped forward. She flipped her long blonde hair and put one hand on her waist. Yes. We are the new actors. Let's start the next scene. Seeing Queen Sylvanas' performance, Duque silently gave her a thumbs up. Yes. Duque, who was familiar with the strategy of Karazhan, knew very well that this was the key to solving the mystery. Upon hearing Queen Sylvanas' words, the announcer, who seemed to be in a daze, suddenly became spirited. He pulled up his collar, and his formal coat instantly transformed into a luxurious black tuxedo as if water had been poured over it. Please follow me. As soon as he said this, the door to the stage, which had been connected to the entire subspace, opened silently. Duque said, "Follow him and get ready for battle." The ghost announcer's steps were elegant and steady. One could imagine how much effort he had put into etiquette training when he was alive. Walking to the center of the nearly 40-meter-wide stage, he turned to the already empty auditorium and said loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's performance. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's performance. Tonight, we will see a love that has been thwarted in every possible way. However, as you all know, not all love has a perfect ending. Sometimes, love is as dangerous as thorns. Hearsay is false, but seeing is believing. When two people who love each other meet tonight, what kind of tragedy will unfold? Let's wait and see." Now the performance begins. Duque, who had played Karazhan countless times in the past, knew almost as soon as he heard the opening remarks that the bosses this time were Romeo and Juliet. There would be 3 random scenes on the stage every time. Each scene corresponded to a different boss. The most classic opera Romeo and Juliet was the easiest of the 3 scenes to deal with. As long as the boss of this adulterous couple dies within 5 seconds, it will be considered a pass. At this time the red curtain began to rise slowly. Muradin, who was standing at the front of the team, slapped his shield with a one-handed hammer, making a loud clang. "You guys hide behind me and attack without worry. I, Muradin, will be your shield and protect you." The outermost curtain rose, and when there was only a transparent white gauze curtain left, the light inside lit up, and a slim figure of a woman appeared in everyone's sight. She raised her right hand in a graceful gesture as if complaining about herself, and opened her palm as if to welcome the snowflakes falling from the sky. Juliet opened her mouth. "Oh, what kind of demon is love to torment me like this? Oh, Romeo, my Romeo, where are you?" Such a classic line. Muradin was like a bull chewing on peonies. There's no such nonsense in the love of dwarves. Just as everyone was listening attentively to the next line or preparing to deal with the changes in the next scene, Muradin suddenly, poof. After a burst of white smoke came out of his body, he turned into a cute little girl in red. Chapter 652. Muradin was a super muscular dwarf. How did he suddenly turn into a Red Riding Hood? Muradin was not some cannon fodder. He was a royal dwarf. There were hundreds of thousands of bronze-bearded dwarves, and besides his brother he was the best fighter. With deity's descent, all his stats would increase exponentially and all his resistances would multiply. When deity's descent was activated, he was the synonym of invincibility. In the great battle, Muradin had fought countless orcs. But now, Muradin had actually turned into a little girl with a Red Riding Hood. What the hell was this? Sorcery? Secret technique? Wasn't it supposed to be the love between a beautiful woman and a handsome man? Where was the promised Romeo and Juliet? This time not only the others but even Duque was shocked. Because behind the rapidly rising curtain, Duque saw the figure of an incomparably majestic werewolf. There was also a large number of oddly shaped smurf bosses behind him. Juliet appeared as an undead boss, an undead girl named Dorothy, a lion man, a tin woodman, a scarecrow, and a witch. For some reason, the handsome Romeo was nowhere to be seen. All the bosses, big and small, were charging over. It was all chaos. Originally, only one of the 3 groups of bosses would randomly appear in the Karazhan Opera House. These 3 groups of bosses represented the 3 classical operas that had somehow transmigrated to the world of Azeroth. The Big Bad Wolf and Little Red Riding Hood, Romeo and Juliet, and the Wizard of Oz. But now it was clear that there were 3 groups of bosses playing at the same time. This meant that Duque's hero team would have to face 3 groups of bosses at once. Protect Master. Khadgar, who was outside the stage, was the first to react. With a wave of his hand, at least 20 Einherjars rushed onto the stage. Bang! With a bang, Khadgar's magic and the charging Einherjars were all repelled in an instant. No one is allowed to disturb this sacred performance. No one would have thought that the announcer would easily block the way of Duke's helpers. At this moment, the announcer was like a god. Master Duke? Khadgar could only stand outside the arena and worry like a madman, unable to do anything. Duke's voice immediately became everyone's highest order. Everyone scatter. Muradin, run around the stage. Benedict, heal the dwarf. Tyrion, stand against the prettiest. Gavinrad, hold the Tin Woodman. The Windrunner sisters took turns fearing the lion. Leave the rest to me. Everyone, attack the little girl who shot the frost arrow. No one understood why they had to do this, but in the face of these thick-skinned enemies, everyone felt weak. Duke's voice became the only thing they could rely on. Damn it, damn it, damn it. I swear I'll never steal my brother's wine again. The domineering Muradin just now had been transformed into Little Red Riding Hood, running around with his transformed little arms and legs. A huge werewolf chased after him, slashing at him. Ah, it hurts. The strange transformation spell turned Muradin's insanely hard and thick adamantine plate armor into mere decorations. He felt like a little girl with her hands tied, and in the face of the evil big bad wolf's molestation, he could only scream and run away brainlessly. This feeling was so suffocating. So was Tyrion. He had killed countless orcs, be it male or female orc warriors. But when he smashed his hammer against Juliet's delicate human female face, he almost couldn't do it. The only good thing was that the holy light clearly told him that the woman in front of him was a ghost. Exorcism. Dazzling golden holy light suddenly exploded, attaching itself to the hammer and blasting at Juliet. Unexpectedly, as an undead, Juliet could also use holy light. And it was a healing spell. Holy light above. Could undead also use holy light to heal their companions? Tyrion almost bit off his tongue. The next moment, a chaotic arcane aura suddenly appeared, forcibly disrupting Juliet's healing spell. Tyrion turned his head slightly and caught a glimpse of Duque, who had just retracted his palm. Counter magic? When all the attackers concentrated their firepower on the seemingly weak girl, Dorothy, Duque was the busiest one. As soon as he interrupted Juliet's healing, the other side released no less than 10 flame blasts with Hand of Magic, forcibly turning the scarecrow into a human-shaped torch, blindly bumping around. Not only that, but a well-timed Frost Nova had also blasted a handsome male undead thief out of the dungeon. At this moment, the undead thief stood less than 2 meters behind Benedict, the Bishop of Holy Light. The air was almost completely occupied by Duque's Hand of Magic, and the huge Hand of Magic was performing multiple spells at the same time. Hundreds of flame blasts formed in the illusory arcane palm, each huge fireball enough to make one's heart palpitate. The 8 seconds of casting time in the fierce melee seemed to be over in the blink of an eye. However, when the sky full of fire crashed down, even the faces of Duque's own people instantly turned pale. Rumble. In his field of vision, huge fireballs whizzed past. In the first second, Dorothy was killed. In the second second, Dorothy's dog was also blasted to death. In the third second, the scarecrow fell with a crash, burned to ashes by the flames. In the fourth second, the lion was jointly taken down by the Windrunner sisters and Duque. In the fifth second, the Tin Man was smashed into pieces by at least 30 fireballs in one go. In the sixth second, the witch followed in the footsteps of the other characters in The Wizard of Oz. If it was the Duque of the past, he would never have been able to make 108 Hand of Magic cast flame blasts at the same time. Just the upper limit of his magic power was far from enough. But after advancing to Radiant Moon, the abundant magic power gave Duque an almost infinite ability to fire. But the crisis was not over because Muradin had changed back. But this time, it was the Bishop of Holy Light who turned into Little Red Riding Hood. He did not react at all. Nor did he realize that after turning into Little Red Riding Hood, he could almost double his movement speed. Protection blessing. On the other side, Gavin Rad reacted the fastest, and immediately cast this divine skill to save the situation. The rich holy light turned into a solid shield, suddenly propped up around Benedict's body. The big bad wolf's huge claws scraped against the holy light shield, making an unpleasant sound like scratching glass. However, no matter how much the big bad wolf waved its claws wildly, releasing more than 30 claw attacks in a mere few seconds, the big bad wolf returned with nothing. We can win. Just as everyone in the team had the same thought, an extremely terrifying stench was released from the audience seats outside the stage. That was the aura of a great demon. Chapter 653. The division of the Eridar race had already happened more than 20,000 years ago. It was long enough for one race to evolve or degenerate into another. That was why the exiled Drenii and Manari, who were later known as demons, had different physical characteristics. The most obvious difference was that Drenii did not have wings. In front of them, the entire opera house and even all of Karazhan was shaking. If it was a normal person, they would not even be able to stand properly. Under everyone's shocked gazes, a portal that looked like a black hole suddenly opened in the ordinary auditorium of the opera house. Countless items and wooden benches that were more than 5 meters long were all sucked in. Not only the first floor but also the curtains hanging on the huge pillars, the decorations on the balconies of the second and third floors, and the mess of tableware and wine utensils were all sucked into the air. This scene was like the end of the world. When the violent shaking stopped, a huge pure black portal with a diameter of at least 40 meters officially opened. The huge demon on the other side of the portal had not yet completely arrived in this world, but one could already hear his beastly roar. For the army. For Kil'jaeden. When Duque heard this, his face darkened. Just from this slogan that he had heard countless times, he knew exactly which big demon had come, the wild boss Kazak who had tricked countless teams in the game. At this moment, if Duque still did not understand everything, then Duque was an idiot. He had been tricked. Ever since he had tricked Sargeras, the Burning Legion had long regarded him as a great enemy. The invasion of Karazhan this time was also a conspiracy that did not exist in the original history. First, he had a big demon touch the spatial barrier of the world of Azeroth, gently provoking the nerves of the dragon aspects. It sent a signal that said, "I may come to attack you, be prepared." Then when Duque came to deal with the outside, he first had to deal with the inside, and the spy hidden in Karazhan made his move. Duque did not know who the demon was or where it was, but it must be in Karazhan. Otherwise, there was no way to explain why Kazak would come when he had brought a group of Alliance heroes to clean up Karazhan. Perfect timing, perfect conspiracy. In the end, as long as Duque and the others were all killed here, Karazhan would become another bridgehead for the Burning Legion to attack the world of Azeroth. Defending a dark portal that could be activated at any time had already exhausted the Alliance's energy. What about another Karazhan that could attack at any time? This horrifying scene was unimaginable. At this time, Duque saw that his Einherjar soldiers had already rushed to the front, ready to fight to the death. Duque admired the courage of these brave soldiers, but not this time. Retreat. Retreat. All Einherjar retreat. The opponent was Soul Catcher, Kazak. Let the Curator and the Virgin Saintess come. Soul Catcher was a name Duke made up. However, Kazak had a skill called Soul Capture. If any person or monster was near Kazak during the battle, Kazak would immediately resurrect on the spot with Faith's Spring, instantly restoring his HP to full. Back then, Duke had suffered the most because Kazak had dropped a very important item. As a result, the entire guild had no choice but to fight him with their lives on the line. Duke didn't know if the Kazak of this world had such a shameless move, but it was better to believe it than to not believe it was definitely not wrong. Let's go. Khadgar's handsome face was filled with unwillingness. Out of trust in Duque, he gestured, and the Einherjar soldiers quickly retreated from the opera house. It was the end of the world outside, but there was also a fierce battle inside. Without Duque's urging, almost everyone was using all their strength to attack. Thanks to Duque and Ronan's crazy firepower, the 6 bosses of the Wizard of Oz had already fallen. Don't panic. Control Romeo and Juliet, kill the werewolves first. If you can't catch the werewolves, open fire. No one knew how Duque knew how to deal with the enemies, but this did not affect their trust in Duque. If not for Duque's command, the team would have been reduced when the enemies swarmed them. Everyone was in a sorry state, and the big demon that was about to come out made everyone nervous. But these were all heroes in the Alliance, and the more nervous they were, the calmer they were. Seeing that they could not help, Gavin, Rad and Theon looked at each other and used Xianxia to knock Romeo and Juliet unconscious. Faster thief. The 5 Silver Saints were so strong that they could even knock out bosses. At this time, it was Servanus's turn to become Little Red Riding Hood. Looking at the dignified Queen Sylvie turning into a little blonde lowly, Duke actually had the mood to burst into laughter. Queen Sylvanus used the agility of a ranger to escape while glaring at Duque. Duke snickered, but his hands did not hold back. Everyone opened fire. Aurelia and Sasha immediately used rapid shooting. A purplish-blue arcane light erupted from Duque and Ronan's bodies like a volcanic eruption. Ronan used the ultimate arcane skill, Arcane Energy. Duque used the top-tier metamagic ability, Arcane Energy Storm. But after Duque became a Radiant Moon Archmage, the effect changed. After activation, spell damage would increase by 200%, mana consumption would increase by 100%, and the effect would last for 20 seconds. The power and mana consumption would increase, but the duration had to be shortened. This was because such a terrifying ultimate skill was a huge burden even for a Radiant Moon Mage's magic circuit. At the same time, the accessories on their bodies were activated again. When unruly will and cruel tricks were activated at the same time, the audience felt like they were listening to a singer sing a song. It was as if the song had reached the highest note, but at the next moment, it went up an octave higher. They climbed to the peak only to see an even higher mountain behind the clouds. There was a mountain higher than the one before and the peaks were endless. Especially when Duque poured all his mana into the 108 mage hands to cast Flame Blast. Everyone could vaguely hear the terrifying roar of thousands of warships firing at the same time. Bang! The stage was as bright as day, and almost everyone could not open their eyes from the blazing light. This was the first time Servanus's face lost all color. Even though she knew that those larger flame explosion fireballs weren't aimed at her, that scorching aura, that terrifying feeling of death brushing past her made her scalp go numb, her entire body covered in goosebumps. Duque, if I die, prepare to be single for the rest of your life. Queen Sylvanus finally could not help but curse. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.